I forget, with all of these faces in front of us, we have a lot of people watching at home. Are we good, Stevie? Okay, perfect. Again, this is the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board meeting March 16th. This meeting has been called to order and we are going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started this evening, I'd like for everyone in the audience to join us in a moment of silence. We lost one of our staff members last week from Barbara Roby Elementary. Her name was Melissa Brown. So everyone just bow their head in silence for a few moments. Thank you very much. We are wishing her family and friends and school family well right now. Okay, we are going to jump right into our conscious discipline, brain smart start. And the first activity to commit with board member Moran. Yes, we can. We're going to reverse that order and we're going to start with our activity to unite with Melissa Zeidema. I'm being extremely efficient this evening, moving us along. Sorry about that, guys. This is working. Yes, good. Okay.
So our uniting activity for tonight is going to be to recite the LESD mission and values together. This comes from our strategic plan. Right. So if everybody can join me basically so we can do this. Sorry, this is my first time doing this. But I think it's important to remember why we're here and what we're doing here. So our mission is to connect, educate,
empower our LSD family and community.
We value academic excellence,
well-being,
teacher
quality, people first, prepared for life, and communication. Thank you, Melissa. All right, Kim, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay.
So I am doing the activity to commit, and the purpose of this is to make a commitment that is spoken out loud because that increases the likelihood of follow through and accountability. So I am going to read the commitment, and then at the end, each of us will say, 1, 2, 3, I am willing. So my commitment comes from our governing board norms. And it states, as a member of the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board, I remember that my first and primary concern is the education and welfare of Litchfield Elementary School District students. And I will conduct myself appropriately and professionally at board meetings by rendering decisions based on available facts and independent judgment and refusing to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups. 1, 2, 3, I am willing.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. I am willing, Kim. Okay, if you're following along on our agenda, we are now on item 3A, recognitions and celebrations with Ms. Shelley Hornback. Good evening, Shelley.
That's a little better, right? Thank you, Stevie and Bradley Cruz. Thank you so much. Welcome to everyone who's joined us this evening. We're very excited to have you all. Community engagement is so important to us, and we welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. We're also extremely excited tonight because we are celebrating that our students are back in classrooms. Yes. Thank you. It's been a long, tough year for parents, teachers, staff, and our community members. Yet we've had so many people stand by us through these very trying times. So we thank our governing board for leading us through this very tough year, Superintendent Gunning, for your leadership in difficult times. We also thank our very hardworking students who have shown great resilience during this difficult year. They showed up with bright, smiling faces, and they are ready to learn. We thank them for sticking with us and coming back strong to finish this tough year. To the families who've stayed with us, we thank you very, very much. We are extremely grateful. We are proud to partner with you in education, and we thank you for sticking with us through this tough time. And to our community members who don't even have kids in our schools, who still come up and ask us, how can we help? What can we do for you? Can we bring your teachers food? Do your students need computers? Does your PTA need some support? Time and time again, we are answering phones and thanking people who are here for us during good times and bad. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for helping us celebrate our students back in classrooms. Also, we'd like to pause in honor of a celebration for a really fun thing that happened right before spring break. If you hadn't been following along, it was Young Authors Week, and our Panther family at Mabel Paget Elementary School crushed it, absolutely crushed it. Board Member Moran and President Clymer, you know firsthand because you were there reading with students, and we thank you for doing that. First and foremost, to get kids to learn to read, they need to be excited. It has to be fun. And that's what happened with Young Authors Week at Mabel Paget Elementary School, primarily in thanks to Melissa O'Neill, a second grade teacher there who did such an amazing job at getting kids excited, getting teachers excited, and getting our community involved. We saw an outstanding showing from the city of Goodyear, including Mayor Lord herself, who was actually very close to bringing me to tears. She read a beautiful book and brought her full self to get these young students excited about reading, but also Councilmember Pizzillo, Hampton, Kano, Campbell. We saw the assistant to Mayor Lord reading to kids. We had our SROs there, Olson and Roberts. We also had Fire Chief Louisi and Police Assistant Chief Farrow, as well as some of our administrators, including Superintendent Gunning, Megan Duplain, Gina DeCoste, Dr. Pearson, Phyllis Lucier, so many friends of schools, friends of the Panthers who showed up to get kids excited about reading. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's huge. It's huge when people lean into the opportunity to get kids ready to learn. So we thank everyone from Goodyear who took time out to participate in this very fun week, and especially to our leader, Melissa O'Neill, who organized all of it. She's empowered by her A+ principal, Leslie Willis, to take the ball and run with it. So Principal Willis, we thank you for that. And I had the honor of sitting in on Ms. Schmedecke's class, Ms. Stair's class, Ms. O'Neill's class, tons of teachers who did such a fabulous job. They welcomed their guests through some tough technology at times because not every guest knows how to operate that technology. So we also thank Laura Combs, our coordinator of education technology, who has helped all of our teachers learn how to master that. Even when they have a guest in the classroom, the teacher can lead through that space, even with the mayor of a big city, to make sure that goes on flawlessly. So much to celebrate. We're really thrilled that you're here to join us in celebrating Melissa O'Neill and the successful Young Authors Week at Mabel Paget. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Next up is item 3B. It's our presentation by Meritain Health, the district medical plan performance and utilization.
Hey, could I make a motion that when people speak, they could take off their masks? I think we're distance enough. And also, I would suggest that anybody speaking that microphone, just swallow the mic and put it up really close. It's very echoey. It's echoey, you know what I mean?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
try. Can you hear me?
If you are comfortable speaking without your mask, you can do so. If anyone is not comfortable, you can leave it on. Either way, I think that's fine.
Okay, I'll put it on right after. Well, thank you everyone for having me. My name is Monica Zook. I am the account manager at Meritain Health. I see some familiar faces and some new faces, so it's wonderful to see everyone here tonight. President, board members, and Superintendent Gunning, thank you for having me. So I have a few items. I'm guessing I can hit, yep, there we go. So just a little bit of history. So we're actually celebrating our 40 years as a trust this year. So we're pretty excited about that. A familiar name you may have all heard, Barbara Roby, started the trust 40 years ago. So I know that name is close to everyone in Litchfield's heart, and we always keep her memory alive at the Asbate Trust. As you can see on our presentation, we have schools all across the state, and we're very proud about that. So tonight we'll cover financial performance and utilization, the impact of COVID has had on your district, what's new with Asbate, and your plan strategy and renewal for this upcoming year. That's a lot of numbers for a page. I know it's probably hard to see, but I'll just kind of give you the high level. I believe you probably have it in your packets. What this is our loss ratio. So what loss ratio is basically medical jargon for how much premium is coming in and how many claims are going out. And what's the function of that? Typically, we need to see around an 80% loss ratio to have a good year. That's kind of what industry standard is for a good year loss ratio. And the charts are kind of last year and this year. And then I pulled the last 12 months of your claims and premium, which is what underwriting will use as the last 12 months of data to project forward the increase for this year. And so happy to report you're running at about 80%. So that's right where you need to be. Any lower, then that's a little bit too low. We wouldn't want to have you too low, and any higher, that means you're running poorly. If you're running 100, that basically means your claims equals your premium, and we don't want you anywhere near anywhere near there. So 80% is pretty good. It says 3 year, but I pulled 5 years of your loss ratio. Again, a lot of little numbers, but it kind of reflects kind of your history over the past 5 years. So you had 91%, 101% wasn't a great year, 84%, 79% last year, and this year 80%. And then on the bottom, you can kind of see how that correlated to your increases over the past 5 years. You will see that your average increase was actually a 5.5%, which is well under industry medical trend, if you hear it on the news or anything. So you've been running pretty well, combined with the Asbate Trust, I think has really helped the district's claims and premium over the years. So a little bit about member utilization. How are your members using your plan? What services are they using? Obviously in this year, it's gonna look a little different than maybe it has in past years. So just kind of to give you a broad overview. So your expenses by service category, I can't even read that, so I gotta look at it. So your overall paid per member per month increased about 4%, which is right around what we expect, this year, any years, right in trend. Your professional claims decreased, and that's your largest cost category still at about 42% of your claims. Professional claims are your doctor's office visits, your professional visits, those sort of things. So that's kind of where most of your claims are occurring. Your inpatient claims are trending down about 8.4%, and that's likely due to the pandemic. People aren't as apt to go get that knee surgery or have that hip replaced or those kind of more elective surgeries this year. A little bit about your emergency room and urgent care, because that's kind of where we can help with members, making sure they're getting the right care at the right place that's going to benefit them and the plan a little bit better. So your total ER services and claims actually are trending down this year, which is a good thing. Again, people aren't as willing to go if they don't have to the emergency room this year. Something to note when you think, yeah, we always tell people go to the urgent care instead of ER. It's so much cheaper. It really, I think, reflects it in this number. So urgent care for the two categories had 74% of the claimants, but only 9% of that total spend. So when you look at that as an impact to your district and to members' pockets, it really is a huge number that to making sure members are going to the right places. Your preventive care utilization was pretty flat. Your members receiving breast cancer screening and colorectal screenings decreased. Again, I think that's a function of people not wanting to do those more elective surgeries this year or services this year. And you actually, that number doesn't take into consideration the 126 employees that participated in the mobile on-site mammography services. So that number will kind of increase. And that was a great number by your team to get everyone to participate this year. And your members with cervical cancer screenings actually decreased significantly this year. Again, I think people are less apt to go into their routine physicals, but we do want to make sure members are still getting the care that they need. Pharmacy, that's everyone's hot topic, as we know. It is the leading cost driver. It's where all the medical trend is going these days as prescriptions become more and more expensive, especially specialty meds. That's kind of where we're seeing a lot of the costs go this year. So Litchfield's pharmacy did go up this year, but it's still only about 22% of, let me make sure, 21% of total paid, which is right in line with what we see in the market. It's about how much of pharmacy compared to medical we see. Again, kind of like that urgent care and emergency room, your brand drugs account for about 77% of paid, but only 10 or 11% of scripts. So it's sort of the same thing, making sure if you can get generic, you are, because it'll really save your members money. Generic accounts for 81% of scripts, but only 22% of paid. So it's kind of just what we tell everyone, but I think when you see it in the numbers, it's really impactful. Teladoc. So you added Teladoc, I think it was a couple of years ago, and it's been really well received by your members. So the report up there is really just your non-high deductible health plan members. And it's an estimate of how much we believe you saved over this year by having that program in place. So you can see it's about $200,000 on just the non-high deductible health plan. And I think it was so great that you added it a couple years ago, because who knew this was coming when we would really need members to have greater access to care during that time, 24/7, wherever they are. So I think, and your members like it. The survey results are very satisfied. So I think members are using services appropriately there for Teladoc. And then this is the high deductible health plan members. So another 16,000 really saved there when you look at costs avoided going to emergency room or urgent care. Okay. Everyone's least favorite topic, but we must discuss the impact of the year. So I have some reporting to show you that just gives you a high level of how many COVID cases you've had at Litchfield and a general overview of that impact. Some of the key drivers are discretionary medical costs. So like I said, those could go down. Your lab testing, that's probably going to go up. Who knows about your hospitalizations, depending on how people are using the plan. Your cost share waivers, so that could increase claims as we open more services up for members, and your medical membership could trend down. So just some of the key factors when we're looking at how COVID can impact claims. So more specific to Litchfield, you had 590 members tested. All three of those bold numbers could overlap. You could have someone go in and say, I've had an exposure, I've been tested, and then I am positive. Or they may not. Someone may just go in and get tested. So 558 with exposure, and then 116 confirmed COVID cases at Litchfield through the medical benefits. It breaks it down further into the age range categories too, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, but suffice to say, that's kind of your overall view of the impact. Yep.
Can I just ask you one question and just clarify that
Absolutely.
116 members with confirmed COVID diagnosis, that could be anyone that's on the plan. So a staff
Correct.
member, a family member, a child, whoever is covered on that plan.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yep. And it breaks it down just to the right. So 100 employees and 16 dependent spouses. And then you can kind of see, obviously, the categories where your employees are really in. Basically, the 25 to 64 years of age are where you had your greatest impact, which is to be expected. So this graph, I like to put this in here. It's basically a breakdown of your different cost categories throughout the year and the certain spikes that we see and changes over the year. So the main one I'd call your attention to is actually right in the middle. It's that orange line. That's telemedicine. So telemedicine is actually different than teledoc. We added that plan, right, or that benefit right when COVID hit, so that members that couldn't, maybe their doctor's office was closed or taking limited patients, could actually call, have their office visit with their actual physician over the phone and get the services just the same they would as in the office. So you'll see that kind of category grow to the plan, which I think is great because members got increased access to care during that time. Okay, so what's new? So ASB, it's always trying to be innovative, especially in this year when people are at home more, maybe more reluctant to go to offices and that sort of thing. We actually are adding Hinge Health effective 7/1. So as you can see, the man up there has sensors on him. Every member that participates will go through an assessment and determine what level they'll get of the program. But in short, it's physical therapy at home. So we know teachers have a hard time being able to take off work, getting someone to fill in, that sort of thing. So it's a really great program that'll allow people to go to those visits, but at home, meet them when they can do the services. So we're excited. More information to come on that we'll be rolling out in the future. Another program along those lines is actually called Skin.io. And what it is it's basically like an at-home dermatologist. We know dermatology is a field that is very limited in providers. It's hard to get an appointment. And being in Arizona, it's even more important as far as sun damage goes. So what this program actually allows is at-home mapping of your skin. It'll detect through dermatologists at the program, changes in your skin, changes, anything irregular, refer you to a dermatologist where you can get care. So we're pretty excited about those two new programs, just increasing that access to care. We know people approach health in different ways now. And with the success of Teladoc, I think your membership will really adopt these programs. Okay, plan, strategy, and renewal. They're wrapping up, I promise. So plan offerings. Obviously, I think you all know things to consider, but really recruitment, retention, keeping your employees happy. And then obviously cost is always a factor in looking at your plan offerings. Currently, Litchfield offers the copay gold plan, which is grandfathered, the classic gold plan, and the high deductible health plan. You overwhelmingly still have a lot on that classic gold plan at about 625 of your employees. So I have good news to share with you all today. It's rare in this industry that I get to share good news. So because your loss ratio is actually at a pass and the trust is running well this year, you get a flat increase this year, no increase to your premium rates. Yay. So yeah, we're happy to present that with you this year. I know budgeting's tough and this year especially. So hopefully that'll help make your decisions a little easier. And then obviously the two new programs. Is there anything I missed or you'd like to ask me?
Any questions?
Sure. Making everyone dizzy. Okay, there we go. Pharmacy.
Yes. Explain what paid and scripts is.
Sure. So for your total of pharmacy dollars paid, you actually, the brand drugs is actually 77% of that bucket of money, but only 10% of the amount of scripts. So prescriptions. So far fewer scripts, but way more money is spent on brand drugs as opposed to generics. that help? More? These are just your claims. So this one's not broken down into how much is insurance versus, it's all just straight claims data. And so for your pharmacy, you have 3 different tiers of medications. And brand is actually split into 2 different ones, but essentially it's saying your brand drugs is that's where the money's going. Brand and specialty drugs. Your generic utilization is 81% of script, or yeah, 81% of scripts, but only 22% of paid. So it's the exact, not exact, but it's the opposite. Yeah. That's the way to go. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Anything else? I think I, did I hear another question?
No, any other questions? No, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You too, thank you. Okay, moving along to item 3C, our COVID-19 update from Superintendent Gunning.
Well, I'm happy to say that, Madam President, members of the governing board, this will be a nice brief update as we have transitioned back to in-person, and we've done it seamlessly by, of course, the amazing efforts of our teachers, our staff, student transporters, food services, custodial and facility staff. They've just done it with grace and ease. At this time, currently, we have over 7,300 students in person. We have over 900 in a hybrid model and about a little over 2,400 in online, and everything has been wonderful. So thanks to all of those folks.
Great. Any questions for Jody? Okay. Moving along. Next is 4A, the acknowledgement of public requests to speak. I'm going to read a short statement about our public comment, and then I will go through the pile and call you up one at a time to give you your chance to speak. Pursuant to ARS 38431.01, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of this board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Governing board members are not permitted to discuss or take legal action on matters raised during open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. The law permits board members to ask staff to review a matter or ask the matter be put on a future agenda. I will apologize in advance. If I mispronounce your name, I will do my best. First to speak is Alex Essen. She'll join me at the podium up here.
Can you hear me all right?
Just, yeah. Just want to make sure you can test that it's working. Yep, sounds good.
Well, that didn't work at all. So my name is Alex Essen, a parent of one of your kindergartners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I need to address you about the district's equity statement and the transformational equity work document. So jumping into it early. I listened intently to the previous board meeting, which got more intense than it probably should have. I understand that the equity statement was not agendized and therefore should not have been discussed, but I am actually very grateful that this topic was highlighted because it forced me to do some research on my own part in the equity work that you have undertaken. Based on that research, I have to say that I'm very concerned and want more transparency from you about the goals of this program. I'm all for equality and that we shouldn't discriminate against students, parents, teachers, or any employees. I wholeheartedly agree with the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think that you should have to go farther than that, and also that you should not try to politicize Litchfield Elementary School District or its policies. I vehemently disagree with quoting Ibrahim X. Kennedy in your equity statement, as it does just that. It politicizes the statement from the beginning, which in turn will cause confusion and strife amongst all the different stakeholders. I honestly hope that this was just an oversight, but it's one that should be fixed. While some of his ideas do have merit, much of what this man says is very polarizing and pretty far leaning in political views. You don't need to open this body, which has a near sacred duty of educating our children, up for that politicization. It's the Litchfield Elementary School District, not a campaign speech. Please understand that I am not discussing race. I am here only to discuss the politicization in a place that I think it shouldn't be. Secondly, I researched the transformational equity work document. I wasn't overly concerned until I went to the websites of the organizations that you plan to pay or sponsor to give our teachers seminars in. These organizations support a curriculum that espouses identity and stratification by race and gender more than it does personal responsibility. Their suggested reading lists and materials are promoting group identity over the basic expectations that humans should be respectful to each other and not trample on the rights of others. Their websites, inclusioncounts.com and arizonaeducationfoundation.edu, declare that the statements "be respectful and work hard," "reach for the top," and "have high expectations" are all microaggressions by a majority people over a minority people. I don't think that you believe this, and I certainly hope you don't. Kids should be taught those things. They are good things to strive for, not evil. Please don't allow yourselves to be beholden to those who want to push political agendas over what we should be doing in our schools, teaching fundamental educational topics and not politicizing controversial issues. If you want to prevent bias, stick to the facts and stay apolitical in education. I would much rather see our taxpayer dollars go to making teachers better at teaching than to push this type of training. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Allison Atkins.
Hoping to get Shelley to read it today, but I guess I'll do. Ooh. I come before you in full support of LESD's work towards equity in the district. By narrowing the gaps between the highest and lowest performing students in the district, eliminating the racial predictability and disproportionality of which student groups occupy those designations, we truly support all student success. I have come to understand that this work has been critiqued as being done in secret and teaching people that they are victims. It has been my experience that parents, Black, brown, and white, certainly do not want their kids to be taught to be victims. Kids and families come to the district with valuable strengths and contributions. What I have heard is what parents want is equitable distribution of resources and equitable policies that support their students at school. This cannot be done without careful examination of existing data points, reflection, and frank conversations, which this plan seems to support. I am concerned about the negative narrative about this work that a board member is perpetuating through the continued communication of unsubstantiated claims, half-truths, and logical fallacies, and referring to the district as a horror show. I feel like that is not in the best interest of our students. This board member has asked how it's possible that this district and others have time to waste on political pablum, posing as curriculum when kids are starved of math and reading skills. There's a lot to unpack there, including the fact that scores that are referenced in the article are one data point. That's not how we define success in the district. In fact, my kids go to the schools and I see a strong focus on reading and math in our schools, so that's interesting. And it's also been said that everybody in the district is against this, which I'm not, so that's not true. And parents that I have spoken to are in support of this. So as I do understand as part of your responsibility as board members, that you should identify community attitudes and opinions, and the district needs to require short and long-term strategies that are responsive within the budget. I think that's a great place to start instead of going back and forth and being divisive. I'm an educator and I teach my kids that there is absolute necessity of decorum and professionalism when engaging in debate or conversations about a controversial topic, and the importance of using facts to support those claims. So for a topic as sensitive as this, that's completely necessary. I do hope that there are future opportunities for parents and community members to be better informed and engage with the work that is being done in the schools. There is much opportunity for concrete strategic next steps that bring our community together instead of dividing them apart. I'm happy to help in whatever way necessary to support our community and do what is best for teachers, students, and the community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Daniel Quist.
Board members, thank you for your time and the privilege to stand up here and talk at you for 30 minutes uninterrupted. I've been watching school board meetings online on YouTube, not because of my deep interest in the mechanics and workings of this organization, but rather just because of the COVID pandemic. I was very interested in how you've been watching or how you've been handling it, and I strongly support all the efforts that you've taken. I've also watched in horror while Mr. Honek has consistently and routinely used a series of racist dog whistles and misogynistic terms such as henpeck. Nobody should have to deal with this, and nobody, and in any reasonable work environment, he would have been gone. He is an elected official, and I'm sorry, but please know we will be taking steps to address that. Mr. Honek and I have exchanged emails, and very limited after his temper tantrum on March 3rd. And I have repeatedly asked for the data to back up his wild claims. Specifically, we saw the waiving of the 40 letters from parents, but we didn't ever see the 40 letters. And I directly asked you, sir, and you still have not provided it. So I'm forced to not believe any of your data. And I would like to also add my voice to the list of people in support of the district's efforts. I would also like to personally offer math tutoring to anybody on the board who needs help. I am willing to give basic lessons such as what happens when you divide a number by 0. So for the rest of everybody here, in June, we have a reflection point when elected officials can be officially petitioned to be recalled. And if you're interested in helping with this process, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Renee Carroll. Card, I'm sorry, that's a D, not an OL. My apologies. Card, you are correct. I'm so sorry. That's actually an easy one, and I got that one wrong. I'm sorry.
I was actually looking forward to following the gentleman that just spoke, but I don't have any scripted written points to touch on. I kind of go on the fly. That's just how I operate. I've done a lot of research into this transformational equity work document, as well as Mr. Kendi's theory, radical theory, unproven, without a lot of supporting facts. And I'm deeply concerned for my kids who are in this district. I've had several kids who have gone through the schools in this district for many years. And let me just tell you, my kids are a minority group. I am Hispanic. Never once have they come home and said that they felt victimized or discriminated against because of their race or ethnicity. Never once. Do you want to know why? Because my children are taught at home the value of people, that you treat people the way that their character and integrity defines them in your view. That is not a place for the district or the board to impose a leftist and yes, I'm going to make it political because that's exactly what this document is. A leftist rhetoric that has no place in our schools. So I know that we can make public requests for information. I want to know how many complaints the district has received from parents of minority children about this topic that makes it so heavy in the forefront above their academic skills like math, reading, all of those things. You're not going to sit here and tell me that simply because we are an A-rated school in a failing state, which is not something that we should all be proud of, because frankly, it's dismal in comparison to some of the success that other districts are seeing across our country. You're not going to tell me that your efforts are better focused on something like Kendi's theory than on my child's academic success. That is not what you're here for. That is not what the educators are here for. And they should not be burdened with shouldering that when the public hasn't had an opportunity to be a part of that process. That is not what you were elected to do. And just as the gentleman said that in June, we have an opportunity to recall members of the board, I'd like to ask those of you who stand with me to support my efforts in recalling the members of the board who are proposing this product, as they call it. Furthermore, I am very willing and very open to sitting on any committee that will be doing further work from a parenting and community member standpoint on this document, because I think that dialogue should not be open to one side or the other, but both.
Thank you. Amanda Miller.
Is this good? Yeah. Okay. Dear governing board members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak before you and other stakeholders in this room. First off, I would like to start with a gratitude. This past year, remote learning has been incredibly hard on my two Bell and Soto students in 4th and 8th grade. I want to say that Miss Melissa Franks has been such a huge support to my 4th grader. She has the patience of a saint, and I couldn't imagine this year without her. I also would like to thank Miss Lazoya, Miss Maldonado, and Mr. Lade. My 8th grader had a very difficult year. She became a statistic that no parent ever wants their kid to be a part of. 3 out of 4 of her teachers advocated for her, stuck by her, and made sure to support her with whatever she needed. And for that, I am incredibly grateful to those educators. I would like to start off by a quote by Candace Owens. If your solution is worse than the problem, it is not a solution. I have had over a dozen teachers reach out to me frustrated and upset over what is being thrown their way with this transformational equity work, thanking me for speaking up for them because they can't do it themselves for fear of retaliation and possible discrimination. These teachers are already stressed out, overwhelmed, underappreciated, and now the district with implementation of this TEW will pit parents against teacher and students against students. All the while, the district is wanting to cut their pay. As a parent of 2 LESD students, I am disgusted by the documents that have been floating around. Why are we using something so controversial as the Ibram X. Kendi statement about racism in our equity statement, a document that has the potential to be so unifying and it gets ruined because of an agenda? Kendi, who said that Amy Coney Barrett is a white colonizer and used her 2 adopted Haitian children as props. What would happen if we used a quote from Candace Owens, PragerU, Ben Shapiro, Heather McDonald, or the United States Senator Tim Scott? the sky would fall and the board would never have that. But it's okay to use candy. The Bible was removed in the 60s from the classroom for fear of indoctrination. Now we are inviting indoctrination back into our schools. The transformational equity work is the very definition of discrimination. Not all students will be created equal or will be treated equally. Disciplining Black and Hispanic students differently than white and Asian students. The achievement and learning goals for Black and Hispanic students. You can't use racism to combat racism.
Thank you. Rhonda Everett.
Thank you so much for just an opportunity. I too thank you. It's been a horrendous year, very difficult, and I am super passionate about kids, about education, and about our community. I am a member of the community. I am a realtor, so the first question people ask is about our education and our schools. And I'm a mom. I have 2 students who have been a part of the Litchfield district the last 3 years. One is now in high school and one I removed at the beginning of this fall due to us not getting information about honors being pulled at the very last second. Additionally, I am super concerned about what I'm seeing. Again, I'm a passionate educator, a former public school teacher, master's in education from Claremont Grad School. I firmly believe in diversity and being celebrated. I completely agree with substance and skill being what lifts all rather than rhetoric and rather than imposing things that are going to cause division rather than true inclusion. My kids, I was born and raised in California, and most of the times in the classes I was in, I was often the only person of my race. I didn't treat people different. My students didn't look at me and say I was privileged. They knew I cared about them as individuals. They knew I cared about substance and skill, not language, not divisiveness. My kids born and raised in Indianapolis, I purposefully drove them downtown Indianapolis daily just so that they could have a more diverse situation. 50% African-American, 50% everything else, all different socioeconomic groups. They handled education. They stayed in their lane. They looked at their academics, not at racism, not at racial division. Instead, they pulled everybody up together. They did it right. And no matter the socioeconomic background, that school had the highest test grades in the state because they stayed in their lane and they looked at academics and they partnered with parents, helping kids see that they matter because of the value and the substance and the skill, not disciplining one because of the color of their skin and giving a difference in academics because of the color of their skin. I told my son just yesterday, when you climb a ladder, you use the rungs. You don't use the backs of someone else or the heads of someone else. And no child, you use the rungs, the substance, the skill building, the academics to help everybody rise and to bring true inclusion and equity, not divisive, radical language, rhetoric that actually divides everybody. There is a way to achieve what we need to achieve, and it's through substance and skill.
Thank you. Sandra Stamp.
I am a parent in this school district. I have a 12-year-old 6th grader at Western Sky. In my 7 years as a parent in the school district, I have taken seriously my responsibility to be active and engaged both in my son's experience in the district as well as how the district as a whole operates. I volunteered in the classroom, on field trips, and I held a position on the PTSA board. I did all of these things because As a community member, I believe it is my way to ensure that the children of our community receive an education that we can all be proud of. The last year has been incredibly trying for all of us. With a pandemic going on, there is uncertainty that we all feel. Last summer, we all watched as racial tension that has been brewing for quite some time boiled over. We saw protests happen all over the country, even here in our own neighborhood. I participated in those protests, and I allowed my son to participate as well. Showing him the power of his voice is important to me. More than our voices being powerful, we need to see real change come to our community. Where there is inequality, we need to see ideas and policies that will change that. We need to see our district evolve to a place where there is equity for all students. I've read the LESD equity statement. I agree with its purpose and intent. I am proud to be in a community that strives to show that, quote, diversity means cultivating a wide representation of people, ideas, processes, and experiences. Equity recognizes that we are born into unequal and unjust circumstances. These factors should not predict our ability to fail or succeed. Inclusion means creating the conditions that foster belonging to enhance what makes us unique and strengthen our community. I think it's really easy to rail against the unknown. I think we are seeing some of that right now. I want to believe that we can all come together because I believe, as Kendi says, denial is the heartbeat of racism, beating across ideologies, races, and nations. It is beating within us. Thank you for the work that you're doing on this. It's not going to be perfect. I think that we are all wanting to come to the same conclusion, the same end point, and I think we can do it together.
Thank you. Betty Garner. I'm sorry? Okay, great. Thank you. Linda Kesselman.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I have experience as a teacher. I taught for close to 30 years. And I don't know when all of this craziness happened. While I was a teacher, we had a wall that expressed exactly who was worth noting, of importance to the world. Those who were Black. We had the Harriet Tubman, the Rosa Parks picture. We had Martin Luther King. We had Thurgood Marshall. That board was switched out all the time. It wasn't just thrown up there as, here, look, we're covering people who aren't white. It was a matter of gaining respect and knowing that we all had to respect each other no matter what color we were. So I don't understand this transition. If teachers did their job, and I'm sure your teachers are doing their job, they incorporate Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans into their classrooms. That's what good teachers do. So I don't understand the route this is taking. And it does sound political, and it sounds inappropriate to me, very inappropriate. And I applaud those parents that got up to discuss that their kids are being exposed to this type of mentality. I applaud them. They're sticking up for what they want their children to be aligned with, and that is learning the right way. This could turn into a very disgraceful period of time for your school. And I would venture to guess that parents, both Black and white, will pull their kids out of public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Kilhofer.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to address the board. I don't have a prepared statement, mainly because all of this has just come to light in the last few days, which is really my biggest complaint here is the lack of transparency that we as parents have experienced. In a document that actually I can't even access anymore, there was links to it yesterday and suddenly it's not there. I copied and pasted these words. We are developing a plan to communicate our work to our parents and community. We learned through our CD rollout that communicating this work too early prior to empowering our teachers and staff with the tools necessary to answer questions from parents, etc., will not render positive results. Is that transparency? You know what? That is what really sparked my interest to dig deeper. You know, this is in your document. Further on, the document references reducing disciplinary action by race, reviewing library books, and hiring based on race, ethnicity, gender identity, faith, sexual orientation, socioeconomic class, and age. You know what? We have fought and battled for equal rights in this country. This doesn't sound like equal rights. This sounds like we're going to go higher based on meeting a quota. And you know what? In the 80s, we played that game. I worked in the government in the 80s. And there were jobs that I couldn't get over less qualified people because of the color of my skin. And please understand, I want you to know, yes, I have 2 white children at Litchfield Elementary School. I also have a Black grandchild that will be attending this district. And Kendi teaches that you are either a victim or you are oppressed. I'm sorry, I don't want my grandchild being told that he is a victim, nor do I want my children being told that they can only be an oppressor. Referencing Kendi was a bad idea. And the lack of transparency was a bad idea. And when it comes to discipline, I've got to tell you, discipline should always be subjective. Discipline is meant to correct behavior. We do not have and should never have target benchmarks for percent of suspensions or anything like that. Discipline should be based on the heart of the child, the situation, the amount of times that that particular student has been in trouble, and things of that nature. That's what got this country in trouble in Florida, was specific benchmarks of at times that the police could be called. Why would we do that here in this school district? I want my children protected. I don't want them bullied. This is a call for bullying.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Ryan Risselman.
Good evening. The Governing Board Policy Manual's first operating goal states, as representatives of the people who own and support the schools, the board accepts the responsibility to identify community attitudes and opinions. You're guilty of not fulfilling this responsibility. Not once since July, when you started working on the Transformational Equity Plan, has the community's opinion ever been sought after regarding these changes that will affect the district and the community as a whole. In fact, at the December 1st study session, a board member asked Kim Moran, how many people besides the people in this room have you gotten feedback from? This is a big shift right now. How much buy-in have we gotten from our community, our staff? Ms. Moran replies, really the primary feedback has been from the people in this room and the Diversity Empowerment Committee. Then on December 8th, when the equity statement was passed, Ms. Moran states, This will not only be a culture shift internally, but also for our students and our community. Well, then why didn't you inform the community that you plan to shift our culture for us? That was over 3 months ago. The equity statement was then posted in an inconspicuous spot on the district's website that took multiple clicks to find. You had to know what you were looking for to find it. It took a huge commotion for you to finally send it out, along with a contrived email that was less than forthcoming. That equity statement is purposefully very vague. Why didn't you send out the real document, the one that describes the race-based discipline, curriculums, and hiring practices, or race-based trainings all staff are mandated to go through to teach the children about their privilege, their microaggressions, and bringing social justice into the classrooms? If you're so proud of this work, so confident that it's the right move for our community, you should be jumping at the chance to show it to us. Instead, you're being deceitful. The very first goal in tonight's presentation is cause for concern, and then it all goes downhill from there. But goal number 1 reads, discipline. By the end of the 21-22 school year, the number of suspensions for Black students will be reduced to no more than 15% of total suspensions. Not only does that not have the optics of being incredibly racist or possibly illegal in some way with the equal protection clause, it just seems so arbitrary. So you're telling me that if the 15% quota is met, and then after that, if a Black child commits an infraction like starting a fight, that they would not be suspended simply to make your numbers? To me, it just looks and sounds horrible. Equity is not equality. In your email, you welcome any questions and concerns. Well, I'd like to know why all of mine have been ignored. My first question regarding the transformational equity plan was responded to by saying that I had bad information. When I pointed out the information could not be bad, as I was copying and pasting it verbatim from your own document, I was met with silence. I have since sent 4 other emails to you and the superintendent, always polite and posing very well thought out questions or concerns. Not a single one of those have been answered. Your job is to provide these kids the best of everything: education, curriculum, teachers, and the best school experience. LESD has a very good reputation. It's why I and countless others have moved our families here. Bringing this type of program into our district will have negative effects on all kids of every race, and you will lose good teachers who know this is the wrong direction. We don't want to become a woke district. We want to remain an A+ rated district. This is not the way. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Kelly Fritzler. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
I don't have anything really prepared. I really wasn't planning on coming here till probably a couple of hours ago. I have a little boy with special needs that attends school district. And I will say I've been involved in his schooling since day one when he was going to developmental preschool starting age 3.
A little louder, please. Closer.
You know, the school district is one of the reasons why I moved here. I moved here because you guys have all been so welcoming and helpful, and especially this year with the whole COVID online and things like that. But, you know, after reading this whole thing about the diversity, it really made me stop and think that this will affect my son as well. With his disability, you know, people, when they look at him, they automatically judge. So now my son will have one more thing that he would have to have judged. He has so many friends. It's amazing. He has so many friends of color, of every race you can imagine. And I just don't understand why this is even an issue. Why are we bringing this up as an issue? Do we have a lot of complaints? I don't know. If there were complaints, then why weren't we told? And why wasn't the parents involved? I mean, I don't understand why we have to bring race issues, if they even exist, in our schools. Our kids are our kids. They're small, they're young. They learn from us. We are their parents. I'm more of an emotional type. I'm not very eloquently spoken when it comes to statistics and things like that. I speak from my heart because I know my son. He looks at someone and he doesn't see color. He doesn't see any of that. So, I think that this is just going to hurt all of our kids, every single one of them. It's just, like I said, I have so many things written on here that all of our kids are equal. And I have taught my son, you are just as valuable as anyone else in this school. And so now I'm thinking if we have this stated to where, there's going to be race issues involved, that now my son people are gonna look at him differently. And I just don't see that's appropriate. I think it's gonna cause more division than anything. My son is already in division, with the whole inclusion. They included him as much as possible, but this is going to be more of a divide for my child. You talk about bullying. Let's do that. Let's do things that are really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone who got up and speak tonight. I know it's hard sometimes to come in front of a crowd, so thank you very much. We appreciate your comments and feedback. So if you're following along with our agenda, we are now on 5A, which is our consent agenda. I will open the floor for questions or discussion or a motion. Okay, what letter is that, Jeremy?
It's 6E.
B, okay. Oh. B.
If the minutes for March 3rd, they should not be in a consent item. I do not agree to that. We need to discuss them because the ones that are presented are a complete total lie.
Okay, we will remove item 6E. Any other questions or discussion?
Now I move to approve the consent agenda excluding item 6E as discussed.
I second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Voting on, I'm not sure.
The motion is to approve the consent agenda minus item 6E.
Is 6B the?
6E is an elephant. I'm sorry with my mask. That is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting and executive session on March 3rd that you just asked to have removed.
You're saying 6E as an echo, correct?
Correct. Right, so let me just read it again to make sure we're on the same
Separated out,
page.
6E is separated out, so yes.
Correct. The motion is to approve the consent agenda minus 6E. Good, okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 5B, we will address the item 6E, approval of minutes of the special meeting with executive session on March 3rd. Jeremy, if you'd like to start that discussion since you pulled it off the agenda.
Yes. I guess I'm going to hold down the mic. Okay, so March 3rd was rather contentious. The minutes that are provided are written by an attorney who I believe was not even supposed to be at the meeting. That wasn't identified, and I believe people have to be identified so the public knows who they are. The actual minutes that are correct, I will read. President Clymer opened. Is it talking? Okay. President Clymer opened discussion regarding the two proposed changes from a board member to contract language, paragraph 2 and 17. Mr. Honak requested changes to paragraph 2 and 17 in the teacher contract language. Mr. Honak shared that he had sworn to uphold the United States Constitution over his allegiance to the board or district. Mr. Honak shared that the board district could not be trusted because they were deceptive about the district's academic achievement, adopting the equity statement, and were hiding the transformational equity work document from the public, all in the context of why changes were needed in the teacher contract. Mr. Honak shared he would explain where the district is, how it got there, and what needed to be done. Mr. Honak was never allowed to get beyond his introduction, in contradiction of how board members are usually allowed to express opinion in the manner they choose for as long as they want. Mr. Honak had already provided his proposed contract changes to all members of the board, but was never given the opportunity to explain why those changes needed to be made and how the public felt an urgent need for those changes, some of which we heard tonight. Mr. Honak was constantly interrupted and badgered by an unidentified person who had no right to be speaking. Neither the board president nor anyone else made any effort to stop this unseen and unidentified person from harassing Mr. Honak with unwanted distractions and false legal advice. And by the way, I was exactly on the agenda. It was only on the agenda because I wrote a letter to Superintendent Gunning, which is the normal procedure. You have to go to the superintendent or the president of the board and state why you want something. And I wrote a letter outlining everything about the equity statement, the hidden thing. So the hidden transformational equity document that seems to be so odious. So there was never any way anybody stopping this. They didn't do their duty to identify this person. And so I was harangued, harassed, and by this person and just simply badgered. A named person repeatedly stated that the equity statement and transformational equity work plan are not on the agenda. I repeatedly protested her objections that the equity statement and transformational equity work were exactly the reasons needed for contract changes, because they allowed teachers to, at their own discretion, change and modify the lessons to fit Mr. Kendi's weird philosophies. I shared that at one point she interrupted me so much. I said, I am talking about the contract. Excuse me, I am talking. You've already said that. You were talking over me. Anyone could look at the YouTube and see that. I shared that the board was going against the will of the people who want the contract changed. And yes, I did get 40 letters, and I'm sorry I can't divulge them. I don't have the right to do that. Someone can someone, excuse me, you're not talking right now. I am. And you can do a FOIA request. I shared that it was going against the will, and there are thousands of parents out there that think this has to be changed. I stated that the 40 letters unanimously stated that the changes needed to be changed, and no letters were received that said no changes. Ms. Zeidema here stated, we have 40 letters because you reached out to people and caused a problem and made a controversy when there wasn't any. Mr. Honak shared that his job was communicating with the public about what the school was doing. And I will repeat what Mr. Risselman said, that the duty of the board, the first duty of the board, is to listen to the public. That is supposed to go listen to what their opinions are instead of hiding it from them. So then at this point, somebody said that I was doing false information. If you were not giving out false information, every piece of information I gave was absolutely accurate, and anybody can test that. I was truthful in all regards. The unnamed person, excuse me, sir, do you need to leave or what? The person who remained unidentified, about 41 minutes into the meeting, that was actually about 10 or 15 minutes when my speech would have been 5, directed the board to proceed with action on the table to reading regarding the contract language.
actually, it was chaos, everybody talking. And during that, they all voted. And I realized there's no point in my going on. I'm going to be interrupted. And so it was, so the person who remained unidentified during the entire meeting was District Legal Counsel Jennifer McClellan. Ms. McClellan requested that the following information be included in the minutes. My suggested changes were previously given to Superintendent Gunning, who subsequently decided the attorney would be needed and schedule the executive session, but failed to put the proposed changes on the agenda. So, so my changes that they wouldn't let me go said that there are two things: teacher performance, and there is race that's in the contract. The teacher performance as existed said, show up, teach the grade assigned, amen.
Jeremy,
Jeremy,
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second? If this isn't directly related to the minutes, we can't talk about that. So I just want to keep you on track with, if you want to make a motion to
the
approve
change
these.
the minutes actually say that paragraph that it included my changes. So I think the public has a right to know this, and it's right on the topic here.
I'm not saying that you can't say the changes. I'm just saying we know what those are. So I'm just asking if you want to propose that we accept these, or
Well, you
just,
know what, we could go back and forth, but like we did before, why don't you just let me finish and I'll be done in about 90 seconds. We'll be out of here. Okay? Is that okay? Or do we need to shut me up again?
I'm not trying to shut you up, Jeremy.
Okay, then
Please
I'll continue. Paragraph 2, change it to teacher agrees that only having 56% of students proficient at reading and 57 at math is unacceptable, and teacher agrees to do whatever is needed to significantly increase reading and math proficiency. Teacher agrees that every student needs high academic expectations, and since they may not get that at home, teacher agrees to constantly remind each and every student that regardless of their own circumstances, and even though the United States is not perfect, if they work hard, they have better opportunities here to succeed than anywhere else in the world. Teacher agrees to perform such other duties may be assigned, blah, 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 blah. Paragraph 17, race. Change to this. It said basically the thing about the drinking fountains or whatever. Changes to this. Racism is horrible and will not be tolerated. Any teacher practicing racism is subject to immediate termination. Teacher agrees that teaching children critical race theory, specifically even inferring that any child is a victim or oppressor based on their skin color, constitute child abuse, which will result in immediate termination, including losing all seniority benefits, pension, and criminal prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. Teachers shall not discriminate, as it would be the normal case with child abuse. Teachers shall not discriminate in the normal type of thing. So basically, that's all I have to say. It was approved by everybody. I voted absolutely nay for this despicable and people ignoring the duty here. This needs to be in the minutes because it's actually what happened, not their self-serving thing written by their lawyer trying to cover their butt when they actually broke the open meeting law. Amen. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. There's further discussion or a motion on the table?
I motion to approve the minutes as originally presented, excluding all changes Mr. Honak made.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor?
I
Excuse me?
have one more comment, if I may. I just read today that the Arizona Attorney General has made a demand on this district for all kinds of information. They are investigating March 3rd, and they are investigating the origins of the Diversity Equity Committee. That's a public document, and so that's it. So there we go. Now let's just go ahead and.
Jeremy, that is absolutely not on our agenda this evening. We need to move on. There's a motion on the table. If there's not any more comments or questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay, I don't vote for a lie.
Motion carries. Sure. Before we start on action item 7A, we're going to take a short 2-minute break for bathroom and water. We'll be right back.
got it screwed up with the mic. I thought I had to hold it down. No, I.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just trying to keep the meeting on track so we can get out of here at a good hour. We will resume our agenda on item 7A. This is the Community Education Department preschool program changes. Dr. Stair will be presenting.
Good evening. I think we're waiting for the PowerPoint to load here. When I was a kid, I thought 7 was my lucky number. And then one year I had 7A as my basketball jersey. It said 7A on it. Didn't hit a free throw all year. So I revised. 7 isn't necessarily my lucky number. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. This is following up on my presentation that I gave previously a couple months ago at the study session, plus a couple of recommendations. We can go to the next slide, please. So in keeping with the goal of equitably providing high quality preschool programs which are accessible and affordable while remaining fiscally solvent, I'm recommending that we authorize the creation of classified credentialed preschool teaching positions to replace certified teachers by attrition only. I want to make it clear that the goal is not to get rid of certified teaching positions. We love our certified teachers. We value our certified teachers. We really only want to do this to the point that it makes us fiscally solvent. And also by limiting the number of credentialed teachers, we can make sure that we're getting the most qualified credentialed teachers. There's a big pool of them out there. We want the best. We want to make sure that all of our preschool teachers are highly qualified for their jobs. And then I'm also recommending that we maintain the 20% staff preschool discount. In our strategic plan, this aligns with our pillar of finances and resources, of course, because it would eliminate the financial deficit, and also with our service and student success pillars, because we continue to provide high quality preschool services for our students and the services we provide for their families. Is this best for kids? Certainly program viability is what's best for kids. We want to make sure that the program's simply available to them. And then also program quality. And like I said before, our goal is to maintain that quality. And we hope that this proposal will minimize disruptions to our current programs that are operating so well. It is anticipated that they're the most likely course of action to maintain our high quality programs while still meeting our budgetary necessities. So what has changed since the last time that I presented? Last time I presented, we were basing all of our assumptions on 13 students per classroom, that we would be opening under the same COVID guidelines and restrictions. What has happened in the meantime is we've reopened. Everybody else is back in school who wants to be, and also the health metrics have been on a very positive trajectory. And so, and I think justified optimism, we're assuming that we can start with larger class sizes in the fall than we ordinarily, or than we had originally thought we might. And so we're looking at you know, our maximum class size by ratio is 26 students. And we're being a little conservative with our estimates here because this is how we typically start the year. We would typically start a year with about 20 kids in our full day classes and with about 16 kids per session in the half day classes. And you have an AM session and a PM session, so that would equal 32 students per day. And that's our historic average starting day. And then sometimes it climbs from there, usually climbs from there. You have students that register as the year goes on. And we would only do so if it's safe to do so. So the numbers are based on that 20 full day and 16 half day kids per class. Another revised assumption is, well, included in the calculations here there are a few additional aids that you would have to add in order to meet your licensing ratios for the larger class sizes. And so that's included in the calculations that we'll show you. The calculations also include the assumption that 3 of our teachers would be credentialed, replacing 3 certified teachers who we know are leaving. So last time when we talked, the board had asked that I examine what would happen if we change the staff discounts. The current discount is 20%. We used to give more than that, but tax laws changed. And so that anything over 20% is counted as income and they're taxed on that. So the 20% discount is what has stood since that time. And our projected revenue with a 20% staff discount would be, as it says there, about $143,000. Our projected revenue, if we had a 10% discount, you can see would go up to about, and I said that wrong, but $1,471,000 or $1,472,000 there. And then with no staff discount, you can see it goes up to about $1.5 million projected revenue. Our projected program costs will be about $143,000, not $1,435,000. I'm going too fast here. And you can see all our current assumptions underneath there, that we would maintain those class sizes, the same number of classes, the same ratio of employee discounts. In other words, we'd still have about 25% of our full day kids getting a discount because they're children of employees. It also assumes that we would not increase salaries. And I think that may be a sticking point here, because if we increase salaries, we would have to look at either increasing class sizes or increasing our rates, one of those. And so if we increase salaries, we may have to look at increasing rates by the same ratio. It also assumes unchanged tuition rates, keeping our current tuition, and then no field trips or transportation costs for next year, which is already the plan, at least to start the year, because we're trying to limit field trips that take the kids off campus for health reasons. And some caveats. First of all, in order for this all to work, we'd have to meet those minimum enrollment projections. And so if we didn't meet those minimum enrollment projections, we would have to combine programs. And so that's one thing that would have to happen in order to make all this work. Another caveat is DES subsidies will be available to enable more families with low income to participate, which may actually increase our enrollment. It very likely will increase our enrollment. It also assumes that 3 credentialed teachers will replace those 3 certified teachers. And it also, another caveat is increasing salaries would change the projections, as I mentioned earlier. So looking at credentialed versus certified. So our projected costs, and these are staffing costs only, not our total program costs. So our projected staffing costs with 3 credentialed teachers would be $1,404,200. Our projected staffing costs with all certified teachers would be $1,542,700. And so that's a cost difference of about $138,500. So based on our current year rates and expenses with increased enrollment factored in, then those 3 credentialed teachers, transitioning to 3 credentialed teachers would be enough to balance our income and expenses. In other words, it would erase that deficit that we were anticipating for the beginning of next year. So who is impacted? Of course, staff are impacted. It does maintain our current staff minus attrition. In other words, no current certified teachers would have to change positions or would have to look for any other job. Of course, it affects our students. It allows more students to participate while maintaining program quality. We can increase the program size. And of course, families. It allows us to provide affordable tuition rates. And then timeline for completion. This really hasn't changed since the last time I presented it. Of course, we need to notify teachers as soon as possible before contracts are issued. We need time to train classified staff, certainly by May. If we're going to be hiring credentialed teachers, we need sufficient time to go through that process. It's kind of a long process, takes 7 or 8 weeks if someone's ready to be credentialed to actually get it done. And then parent notification. In the enrollment period, the initial enrollment period actually ends this Friday. And then after that, we know how many open spots we have to fill in. And it's been pretty brisk. We have a lot of enrollment happening, and way more than last year and even more than the previous year by this point. And so as of this Friday, we'll know exactly how many spots we have to fill, and then we can start advertising those spots. And we would like to be able to advertise what kind of teacher will be in the classroom. Parents are going to ask, of course. That was a lot in a hurry. So certainly open to any questions you may have.
I think based on where you've come from what we had talked about before, it looks like you did a really great job. So to me, it looks good, but so I only have one question is, basing on, it's not the ideal world and what needs to be done. What is, you're the person that's in there and knows how it runs. What is your feeling about this circumstance that it's in and this solution that you've come up with?
Well, I'm projecting what I feel is the best and most reasonable course of action. Yeah. I appreciate the question. My feeling is very optimistic that we're going to be able to open with full classes and lots of kids who are very well served by their teachers. And we already have current staff who are very, very qualified, who know how our program runs, who are capable of being credentialed. And so we feel like we can again continue that quality.
Well, that's good news. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions? I do have a question, Dr. Stair. Under the financial impact, the assumptions that we're making, the no increase in salaries does not seem super realistic to me. We would love to be able to give an increase in salary. What would be your suggestion then to balance that out? Would you suggest an increase in tuition or perhaps switch out to a credentialed teacher rather than certified?
I mean, you're hitting on the options here. Certainly increasing tuition is one option. We've been doing a survey of what the tuition options are at our commercial competitors, and we're still below them. So of course, that's an option. We would like to raise it as little as possible, of course. Concerning the DES subsidies, that's something that we figure into that because DES pays up to a certain level, and then the parent has to pay whatever's left above that. And so, we want it to be affordable for families of every income. And so, if you raise salaries by 2% and our rates went up 2%, to me, I feel that that would be reasonable and it would remain affordable in the program. Switching out to another credentialed teacher, certainly we'd rather not, because then we'd have to take one of our current certified teachers who isn't planning on going anywhere else next year and say, guess what, you're going to have to go to a different position. And we'd like to avoid that, of course.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question for you, actually. You gave the numbers, like the class sizes. Is that our max class sizes, or is that just what we're assuming we're going to start with? Do we have like a cap for our class sizes for the preschools, and what is that?
We do. And so licensing, Bureau of Child Care licensing regulations require that you can have no more than 13 kids per adult. And so from a staffing standpoint, we make sure to always have 2 adults in the room, which limits you to 26 kids by ratio. We don't fill up beyond 22 because we try to leave spots for kids who transition from developmental preschool into typical preschool. So we leave a few spots open. So typically our cap is 22 kids per classroom.
Melissa, was that the only question that you had? Okay, I just want to make sure before I agree with Jeremy. You've done a lot with a little wiggle room. So thank you for bringing that back. I think I do agree that this is the best course of action and to get us financially solvent. I know we've been talking for months, if not a year or more, about how to turn this program around. And I'm hopeful that this will do it. I share Kim's concern in any more increases right at this point. We've had, I think 10, 15%, in the last couple of years having to increase. What I'm hearing you say though, is the increase would only have to be equivalent to whatever that raise or, additional salary would be. So because we're basically solvent as we are now, if we were to increase 1%, if we were to increase 5%, whatever that raise looks like, that's what the increase in tuition would be and no more. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's right. And the reason is because staffing is the vast majority of our costs. If we had a bunch of costs on top of that, then no, we'd have to raise rates even more. But staffing is by far.
So it will
That's
stay
the great
the
thing
same.
about being a school district. We've got rooms, we've got facilities. We just have to pay people.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. So basically, we are, just for the board discussion's sake, we are reviewing this document tonight. There, we can put a motion on the table to approve it. Obviously, if things change and budget is coming up, we'll talk about teacher salaries and we'll figure out how that, I'm assuming you would bring that back if we need to have a increase, and then we would discuss that at that time.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Okay, well, if there's any more discussion, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve the Community Education Department preschool program changes as presented.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stair. 8A on our agenda tonight is the school district spending report from 2019 to 20, and that is Ms. Wendy Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Gunning. So tonight for you, I have a presentation on the school district spending report. I'm Wendy Qualls, the Executive Director of Finance. The presentation aligns with our strategic plan with the pillar for finance and resources to provide an understanding not only of the information that's available about our district, but also other districts if anyone would want to go look at that information. School districts are governed by Arizona revised statutes. The statute requires the Auditor General to monitor the percentage of each dollar spent in the classroom by Arizona school districts. Again, it's school districts. It does not apply to charters, so only school districts are in this report. The report includes statewide data along with a single page for each district. The report was released on March 1st of 2021, and it's available on the Auditor General's website. So the report includes operational spending. And first we need to understand a little bit about what operational spending is. It's the day-to-day operations of the district. School districts are required to follow the Arizona Uniform Chart of Accounts. So this means that our accounting records are similar to every district in the state. So you can easily compare how our funding, the revenues are generated and how the funds are spent. Arizona code is based on the U.S. Department of Education. So even nationwide comparisons can be made between districts in different states. Operational spending is divided into two areas, classroom spending and non-classroom spending. Classroom spending are the funds that are spent directly on salaries, benefits, supplies, textbooks, workbooks, things that are directly used in the classroom interacting with the students. It also includes student support services, which is salary and benefits for different positions that support the students, such as your nurses, your social workers, speech therapy, OT, PT, so other support services for students. Instructional support is salary, benefits, and other workshops, things that are to improve and train the instructional program. So it's our instructional coaches, the trainings that we do for instruction. Non-classroom spending is administration. Not only is that the superintendent and the principals, it's also other clerical workers that perform accounting, payroll, purchasing, warehouse, human resources, administrative technology, and also the governing board's activities. Plant operations is just as it sounds. It's for the salary and benefits and the cost to maintain our facilities. Food services for the salary benefit and the supply costs for the meals that are served, and transportation for not only the salaries and benefits, but also for the maintenance for the buses, the fuel. So there's also non-operational spending. So non-operational spending are things like land and buildings, furniture, equipment, things that last more than a year. It also could be interest on our debt. So when we're paying back for debt service, it could include that also, and just other expenditures. So when we look at Litchfield School District, the classroom spending is 73% of our funds. And that's not just our maintenance and operation. That's all of our different funds. We have over 40 funds that we keep our accounting information in. So 73% is directly impacting classroom, whether it's instruction at 60%, the student support services, and the instructional support. Non-classroom spending is 27%. So 8.3% of that is administration, 10.4 plant services. If we compare that information to the 2019 school year, our classroom instruction was 58.9%, so we increased by 1.1% there. The other were relatively similar. Administration did go from 8.8 down to 8.3. So that is tied to the increases that we gave, where instructional and classified were given higher raises in the past than administration. So they group us into peers. They look at other districts that are similar to us based on the size of the district and if we're in urban cities and suburbs. So our peer group spent 55.4% in the classroom. Kyrene had 63.2. They're only district that was above us in our peer group. Our other peers are Washington Elementary, Pendergast, Tempe, Alhambra, Cartwright, Yuma, and Glendale Elementary. Another screenshot from our specific district page. Our administrative cost per pupil is $659. Our peer group that we just went through the list of our peers is 911, and statewide is 936. If you look at the number of students per administrative position, so consider again, the administrative is everyone in the district office, the warehouse, the board, any of those expenses. And we have one position for every 94 students. Our peers have one position for every 74. And statewide, it's one for every 65. So again, it shows that we have fewer administrative staff than our peers and state. Plant operation, our square footage cost is $6.54. That is a little higher than our peers at $6.16, but it's really close to the state average. Square footage per student, we have 125 feet per student. Our peers have 144 and the state average is 160. Food service, our meal cost is $3.32 per meal. Our peers is $3.37 and the state's 3.46. So we're really close to our peers and state on food. When we look at transportation, they look at the cost per mile. We're $4.61 compared to our peers at $7.11. And statewide is $4.28. They also look at cost per rider, and we're just over $1,100 per rider. Our peer is $1,200, and the state is a little higher at almost $1,400. So transportation, they look at a little different peer group. Actually, it's quite significantly different for us. Pendergast being the only overlapping one. When they're looking at transportation, they're looking not only if you're in city and suburbs, but also the number of miles per rider that you're driving. So again, the average was $7.11. And you can see the other schools listed there. They range up to $10.86. So, and all the way down to $2.80. Another screenshot for our district, broken down by spending area. You can look to see how much we spent per student in 2019 versus 2020. So operational, we did increase the amount that we spent in 2020. And it is lower than our peers and state average. And that goes back to the amount of grant funding that we're eligible for. Most of the grant funding is based on free and reduced student counts, and we're lower than the average. Also, if you try to go out for competitive grants, that's one of the numbers they use. And so we aren't even eligible to go out for some of the competitive grants that our peers are. And land and building is also included in here, the non-operational. So in total, we did go down, but in the prior year, we were opening a new school, and that would have been in those numbers. So that's the reason that decreased. For average teacher salary, our average salary was $61,045. The state average for 2020 was $54,814. The blue line towards the bottom represents the amount of salary that was paid from the Proposition 301 funds. So you can see steadily over the years since 2017, it has increased the amount that we have paid from those funds to our teachers. Some other measures, the students per teacher. In 2017, we were at 21.5. We're down at 20.5 now, so a decrease of 1. So that is part of trying to reduce the class sizes over these years. So you can see that impact. Steadily over the years, our average teacher experience has increased. So that shows the high retention that we've had over the years. And then the percentage of teachers in their first year has stayed consistent for the last 3 years at 16%. Previously in the Auditor General reports, they had a section on student achievement, but since there was no Arizona testing for the 2020 year, that piece is omitted from this report. I went back to our operational peers. So the first peer group that we were talking about with Pendergast and Crane, or Pendergast, Yuma, Cartwright, Glendale, Kyrene, and put in our salary amounts. So the first column is the average salary. The second column is the amount of that came from Proposition 301 funds. So in total, on average salary, Alhambra is the highest paid in our peer group, and then Litchfield. So our average peer group was $55,354. So we are higher than our peers by at least $5,000, almost $6,000. Do you have any questions?
I have a question out of curiosity, Wendy. When we look at the transportation peer group, tell me more about the situation in Riverside. I don't know that school district. So how would their transportation costs be so low? Tommy?
Mr. Sims?
A lot of that is square mileage. They're about the same as us. The per vehicle are about the same. Less students. So they're driving less miles with less students. So that cost per mile is much as more.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Any other questions or comments? Wendy, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome.
Moving on to 8B, still with Wendy, our budget discussion for this evening.
Thank you, Madam President. So just to do a quick little recap of where we've been, where we're going. Remember, almost a year ago, the governor closed down our schools, and he had an enrollment stabilization grant that was available for districts that had declining enrollment, because many districts quickly saw a decline in their enrollment and wanted to ensure the funding would be available to retain staff. So for our district, in the number of students we declined, also to make up for the reduction in funding for operating and distance learning, our funding was reduced 5% for every day that we are distance learning. So we qualified for $7.5 million in grant funding through this enrollment stabilization grant. The need was so great statewide, there wasn't enough funding to fund us at that level. So we moved forward, we retained our staff, didn't lay anyone off. We actually only received $5 million. So we were short $2.5 million from what we had expected. We did not fill positions that weren't needed when we were closed to try to make up some of that difference. But in the end, I still anticipate we'll use about 1.6 million of our carryover, budget carryover that we brought into this year will be lower going into next year by $1.6 million. Also, over the year, there were a couple different acts enacted by President Trump, and those are called ESSER funds. So in ESSER funds, we received a first batch of just about 750,000. We now we've been notified we'll have about another 3.2 million. So in total, $4 million for ESSER. So in total, our district will receive about $9 million to date of federal funding. The federal funding, other than the stabilization grant, is based, the allocation is based on, again, free and reduced students. So we received around $1,000. The state average is $3,400. There's a district that's actually received almost $7,000 per student. So as you hear different news stories about raises or monies coming from these federal grants, you have to remember we only received about 29% of the state average. The state budget is still being negotiated. So here we are trying to set a budget plan for contracts. Our contracts have to be issued by April 15th for our certified staff, but the state hasn't even set their budget yet. So we don't know if there'll be any additional funding available or not. So we need to plan for what we know now. And then if additional funding comes, we can again talk about that and either restore any cost savings items we have or look at other changes once we know what the funding actually would be. The American Rescue Plan under President Biden, we're just starting to get information on that. But I believe, again, it will probably be distributed as the other federal funds has based on free and reduced. So we probably, again, will be funded lower than other districts throughout the state. So with that in mind, we also know that we lost around 1,000 students. We went down 1,000 students this year, which we anticipated some of that decline because our 8th grade graduating class has more students than our kindergarten. And we anticipate that to be the same for next year by about 500 students. So if you're looking at this year compared to next year, you have to budget for around 1,500 fewer students. So when you look at that information, it was around a $10 million cut that we would need to implement. We created a committee to look at how we currently staff schools. And generally our schools have been 200 to 300 more students in each of them than what there currently is. So we had a group of principals and administrators look at the staffing and see what we could do to reduce those costs first. So those you'll have as recommendations next time. We also asked for input from employees regarding employee benefits and salaries, just to see what the feel was like. Do we not use our dental insurance? And we asked a couple other items in there too, but just to get employee feedback. So what I'd like to do tonight is go through our spreadsheet that shows the different cost savings ideas. Oh, Steve, is there a way to get it on my screen? Thank you. So with the administrative recommendations, the almost $10 million cost savings made an impact about 4.6 million. So there's still around $5 million that we would need to either reduce in cost savings or understand that we would be putting money at risk, some of our fund balance or our budget balance carried forward or other funds that the district has. So I just want to go through a couple items and see if you have any questions. Based on the feedback, everyone agrees if a classroom, we should do conservation measures. So if there's a classroom that doesn't have students in it, we aren't just going to move into it and now start using the electricity and having someone come in and clean. We really want to ensure that any empty classroom is not used, so we can turn down the air conditioning or turn them up depending on the season. And then also to look at some water conservation measures. With distance learning, we purchased Nearpod and Screencastify for all teachers district-wide. And moving forward, if we would only purchase that for our DLA Academy, it'd save around $55,000. So we did consider any reductions in paid holidays. To date, I really don't have any positive input for putting anything into there. Everyone really wants to protect the paid holidays. Originally, we had on here to discontinue the teledoc program. That is where employees can call anytime, night or day, to talk to a doctor and get prescriptions. That's $24,000, so it's not much money. And Mrs. Zook didn't talk about that tonight, but we saved around $240,000 in claims. So we would not want to do away with that. Another item would be for dental insurance. Currently, the district pays the full dental premium for the year, and that one is $400. That one, I'd like a little bit more board input on your thoughts related to dental insurance. Or
Yeah.
what additional information would you need to be able to make a decision?
I'd like to give some input on this. So I think we're really fortunate in the presentation that we received tonight in regards to our medical insurance that we aren't going to have any premium increases with that. But we know that the trend is toward increases. So I personally would like to see a shift here and start a portion of that balance of the dental insurance become the employee's responsibility. My suggestion would be 25% of that, which would be $100 per year. The thought being that something has to give with the budget. And so I think that that would be a reasonable cost splitting. Again, the district covering 75% and potentially the employee covering 25% of that premium.
I want my cake and eat it too, right? I want to pay for our health insurance and I want to have a balanced budget. So those two don't always connect. I think that we've prided ourselves for a really long time on covering health insurance for our employees. And I think while I'm not sure that I am there yet to split that cost, as Kim is suggesting, I do think that we are very lucky this year in that we don't have any increase in our health insurance, but that we should potentially in the future look to say, if we do have an increase, that would be the cost sharing with our employees. I know that doesn't help us in this situation right now, but I would rather see us make those future plans if there's a way that we can protect the health benefits that we offer today. And then know going forward that if the district encounters additional health costs, that would be something that we could split with the employee based on what that percentage is.
I agree with the same thing. I think that this has been the most challenging year that our teachers have ever had to go through. And I know we're looking at cuts because we lost these students, but we don't know what next year looks like. And I think that we should look at other cuts before we push this cost onto our teachers this year specifically after we've asked so much of them. And then if we need to look at this next year, we definitely should look at it at that point. Just I don't think that we should do that right now.
I don't disagree with that in that I don't think we will need this full $10 million in cuts. So that's kind of what follow-up question, Wendy, is if we propose these cuts and we find out that we really only needed, let's say, $6 million in cuts, how is it decided what then gets reinstated? Or is that something that you bring back to us for discussion, or how are things prioritized?
So it would come back for discussion, but also you'll see different items on this list. The final decision doesn't have to really be made now. It could be made in a month or two. So while we might say we want to consider, well, to approve contracts, we might consider saying we aren't going to do X, but in 2 months, we'd have the availability to add it back. So it will depend on the item, on how much flexibility there is. So premiums would be something that we'd want to know now, because we're going to start open enrollment normally in April. So we would want the employee to be committing to pay their portion if there was going to be a portion. So this would be one that we would want to make next in 2 weeks, and it wouldn't be easily reversed because we'd be too far into the process.
Okay, yes, that helps. And I can get on board with not increasing. I just think it is an important conversation to have, knowing that increases are undoubtedly coming and that, again, something's got to give here. So to Danielle's point, have your cake and eat it too. If we're trying to cut, it's got to come from somewhere. So we'll get to the rest of that.
The other is just to have a little discussion again on our system for raises is based on performance pay. And so the administration recommendation is 1%. The inflation factor is 1.2. Remember, we have to match all the benefits. So to do a 1% increase for all staff, that would be continuing next year. So the option on the table was, do we not do the 1%? This is another one that we could look at and say, we're going to issue contracts as is, just the same as what we had last year. But again, waiting to see what the state comes forward with and any additional federal funding. And we can make changes to that through June 30th. We just have to approve pay before the start of the new school year. So we could make changes to that.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify what you're saying. So you said salary and you said performance pay. So I want to make sure that we're saying this really clearly because it's very confusing. So you're saying what you're talking about right now is the administration is recommending a 1% salary increase.
So the increases are based on performance. That's why I keep referring to them as a performance increase. So it depends on the level that the employee achieves on their evaluations of the actual amount of their increase.
Okay, so I think we're talking about two different things. On this spreadsheet that you see, we have the 1% performance pay, which is what you're talking about with the inflation and all of that cost of living. But then there's also a 1% increase performance down below. So there's two different line items. So I just want to make sure I understand the difference there.
So down below, you're talking down in the gray admin. So the admin recommendation is to increase at 1%. So the recommendation here, or the discussion could be, no, we're going to hold on that increase and not plan for that in our current contracts. So the 10 million that we're looking at, we needed to save included that 1% already. Okay. Because the admin recommendation would be 1%.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, so it's doubled in here is what you're saying. I mean,
So
it's on the bottom line items, but it's also on the top line
So
items for.
It's added, the bottom section is adding the cost. This top section would be taking away that cost.
Right, okay, I
help
understand. I thought I wanted to make sure that we weren't adding them twice. So you answered that question.
So do you want to have any discussion on?
Yeah, I have some commentary on that. So I would like to see us, since this is changeable based on when we actually get the state budget and we can alter this, I would like to see us meet in the middle. So I'd like to see a 0.5 percentage point increase as a guaranteed based on what we know now, and then potentially have the capability of moving that up to 1% once we have more of an idea of where our funding will actually be.
I will chime in. I think that pay increases are important, not just for cost of living and financial reasons. I think they're also important for incentivize our employees to show them how valuable we are. So I do agree with Kim that, you know, we want to do something. I will say, honestly, I am uncomfortable putting a number in this box when several lines down here, we're going to be talking about, you know, having more employees than we need. And so I'm struggling with the idea that we would potentially give a pay raise to anyone while we're also considering not reemploying, you know, our current employees. So I am all on board when the budget comes out and we know attrition and we know what our staffing ratio is going to look like for next year, and giving as high an increase as we can provide, whether that's 1% or whatever that is. I'm just not comfortable saying today, yes, I want that, when we're not sure that we can have all of our employees remain employed.
So I think we need to remember, we're also going to talk about how we have a rainy day fund, which has a significant amount of money in it, thanks to Wendy and her amazingness with keeping track of our finances. And the rainy day fund is there to cover when we have rainy days, which is what this year has been. And so I personally think saying 0.5% is like, if that's not really, I don't know, I don't feel like that's anything. So I'd almost rather just say, leave it 0 until we know, which I'm not comfortable with. But I think, again, we've asked our teachers to do more than we've ever asked of them before. And so that has to factor in. And I realize we're going to have to make cuts. This is not me saying that we aren't gonna have to make really hard decisions, but I just don't think this is where we do it. I will be honest, I told her I thought we should do 2% and cut other places when I did it, because I don't want our teachers to not realize that we appreciate everything they did for our kids this year, when we asked far more of them than we ever could have imagined. So
yeah, I don't disagree. And it's not about personal appreciation for me. It's about balancing, to President Clymer's point, balancing the number of positions. I would rather we show appreciation to all of our employees and keep them employed. Obviously, we'll see where everything shakes out. And if we can get everything to balance with 1% or 2%, fantastic. I just want us to look at all the options as we go along.
Wendy, can you tell us the timeline on, you know, as you did with the health insurance? I mean, what is our timeline? What is the horizon here for us to know how our staffing is going to shake out, what that looks like, and then what the possibility of increase could be based on those numbers?
So we actually have a meeting tomorrow with all of the principals to talk about staffing and to look at where we have reduced the number of teachers at a specific school. Is there an opening in another? So we're going to talk through that tomorrow. So we'll have a better idea by the 30th. And we're still receiving resignations. So of course, the sooner we receive those, the more that we'll know we'll free up to be able to do raises. So.
I know it's hard to count on the what if or in 2 weeks or whatever, but I would like to say that, you know, for me personally, this is not a no. This is not, I don't want it in there or anything like that. I think I just want to see the staffing numbers before we say wholeheartedly yes. I'm definitely in the yes column. I just want to make sure that we have the staffing that is comparable to that.
So another item on the list was to implement furlough days. Generally, we have a furlough plan that we will again bring to you in a couple of weeks. And that plan goes into effect if our revenues drop too far below our projection. We could then implement a furlough plan. This was in addition to, like, upfront, to be able to change some calendars and have those furlough plans in place. Again, I had some input, but most didn't want furlough days. And again, that would be one that would be in our furlough plan. So when we project our number of students, remember, we now are on current year funding. So if we project a number of students and again, our enrollment drops, the revenue would drop and we would be able to implement the furlough plan that we'll present in a couple weeks. So the next item is to reduce professional development awards. So these are the awards that are in the end of June. And so for teachers, specialists, or student advisor assessment staff, currently that award for the top level is $4,400. This would be to reduce that by 500. And then for assistant principals, principals, directors, and assistant directors to reduce it by 1,037. And for the executive directors, 1,250. So this is one of the items where we could say, we're going to plan to do this if we need it, but we still have until June is when this plan normally comes to the board for approval. And so we would have to June to change that amount. Some other options we had out there were to change the number of specials at our middle schools. This one really I wouldn't recommend. I mean, we've been having as one of our goals in our strategic plan is to have equitable programs, quality programs at all of our schools. So I don't really recommend that. That was one that our committee came up with, just as an idea of truly trying to find a way to balance our budget.
I want to speak on that specifically. I absolutely, disagree with that. Not with you, just disagree with that as a cost savings measure. I think, a lot of these things touch our employees and they touch, people that are really important to us, but this directly impacts students on a daily basis. And I feel like, and we've heard from parents, we've heard from community members and teachers alike that during this difficult year, some of these programs and clubs and specials have been the thing that have, allowed their kids to be motivated to coming to school and for showing up and things like that. So I would encourage us not to participate in that cost savings and try and find it someplace else.
I agree 100%. Same.
Are you saying
Jen?
the specials, you want to leave it in?
Leave it how it is today
Yeah,
and not do it based on student count.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
One of the other items is to cap personal leave. So employees that have leave, they can accumulate up to 100 days. At the end of the year, if they have more than 100, those are paid out at the sub rate for the first 10 and then a quarter of the sub rate for any remainder. So last year in 2020, we had 56 employees that were paid out around $43,000. So those are our long-term employees that have been here for years. And so what this would do would be recommending that they not get the payout.
Explain to me, so what were their days if they're not paid out over 100? What would be you're saying that they would still be able to keep their 100, they would just lose anything above that?
Yes, and this would be a policy change. So this is something, if we want to implement this, we would have to have a policy change to do that.
I don't know if anyone has any comments on it. I will say that it's not a considerable amount of money in terms of what we're looking at in terms of $10 million. But I do agree with the idea that we would change the policy moving forward. I don't know about the impact today in these 56 people. We'll have to see how the budget shakes out, but I definitely think 100 days is a lot of leave. And I think in any other organization or a business, there is a use it or lose it type of policy, and 100 days is very generous. And I think I would be interested in reviewing that policy and changing it and keeping this on the optional budget cuts and determine what that is. But moving forward, we would look at that policy.
So even to implement this next year, the policy would have to bring back in 2 weeks. So this would be one that we would have to start immediately and then.
Sure, I understand.
All right. Just wanted to
Any other discussion about that?
No, I think since, I mean, I agree with President Clymer in that this is something I would like to look at in the future, but not necessarily in the next 2 weeks based on the dollar amount of savings.
Can we change the policy moving forward and not affect this line item? Do you understand what I'm asking? Meaning like
So you would
these
wa-
people would be grandfathered in basically is what we're saying. But is that a possibility, or once we change it, then it changes for everyone moving forward?
Would you just want them grandfathered for a year? Because they would
Mhm.
still have an opportunity. So for example, if they are paid out at the end of this year to their 100 days, they would still have the opportunity to use those days that they're accumulating throughout next year. So that would be why it would be important to do it in 2 weeks, so that before they sign their contracts, they know, right, that this benefit would be changing. Or we wait longer and it goes into effect the year after that. And I'm not sure grandfathering.
I
for how
understand what you're saying.
long-
I was just saying they would still get the payout this year, and you just answered
Yes,
that
this
question.
year,
So
yes.
yes,
Yes, they
I
would
would be in
still-
favor then of doing that in 2 weeks, as long as they would get paid out this year, and then moving forward, they would have the entire next school year to spend any of those accumulated days, however they decided to.
That seems fair.
So the next one is for sick leave. So a couple years ago, when I believe it was Proposition 208 that implemented, or 206 that implemented sick leave. At that time, the employees that had leave plans, we reduced their leave plan days and put those into sick days. And then we added plans for sick days for those that didn't have a plan. So our part-time employees don't earn personal days. So they now have sick days. So over the first year or so, as employees said, you know, you took away really some of my personal leave days and you made them sick days, but they, by our original policy, they were use or lose. So what we did is revise that policy so that if they come back and they have more than 80 hours, those hours can go into their leave plan. Or if they don't have a leave plan, we're paying those out. So to be consistent with what we just talked about, employees having more in their leave plan than our cap, not paying those out, I would think to be consistent, we'd also want to say, if you have earned your 80 hours, we wouldn't pay those hours out. I would think we'd still allow them go into their leave plan, but not to be paid out.
I understand. That makes sense to me.
And again, it's not much savings currently, but it's going to add up as the years go by and accumulate up. The next recommendation was to pause our Studer consulting services. That would save around $54,000. So if we have any discussion on that item.
Yeah, I personally think Studer is a great value at $54,000. The benefits that we have gotten, the data points that we've gotten from them, the feedback and the recommendations that we've been able to implement through the strategic plan has been comprehensive and has been, I think, revolutionary in the way that the board has operated, as well as getting everyone focused on where we need to be at every level in the district. So I'm all for Studer, and I think they're worth their weight in gold.
I agree. I think just based on the relationship that Jody has built with the organization and the guidance that she's gotten, data that's been available to her, help with our surveys and things that we've done and that are actually, you know, now part of our strategic plan moving forward. I think it is, you know, like you said, you know, worth its weight for sure in the value and benefits we've received for those dollars. You know, nothing is off the table. This is budget cuts, so everything is, you know, open season. But I do think that there is a lot of value there that the district as a whole receives, not just, you know, one group. So I would be in favor of keeping it as well.
I would not, just for this year, seeing it as a pause, because this is something that's not direct. I don't feel like directly hits our kids. They have helped us to get our strategic plan. We do have a good system that we're working with it. And I would hope that we could bring it back as our enrollment numbers come back. But this is something we can do that we're not having to directly take from our staff or our students.
Good input. Thank you, Melissa. Jeremy, did you have anything?
Jeremy, did you have any comments?
Okay, I'm sorry. It just looked like you were leaning in. I thought maybe you were talking. Okay, go ahead, Wendy. I'm sorry.
But in that one, this one is one, I mean, we have until next year to make that decision too. So it could be one that we would say, you know, maybe we might not do this, but really we have until next year to decide.
Okay.
Because that purchase order can be issued anytime.
Right. Okay, that's good information to know.
So the next item is in my original projection. I did not include inflation. The state is not required to fund our inflation factor, even though the governor believes it will be around 1.22. Once they get into negotiation, there is no requirement for them to fund that 1.22. So I did not have that in my estimate at the time that I did the estimate. Based on discussions through our Arizona school business officials, they feel that the inflation will be in the budget, but we really won't know until it happens. But I think it's safe to go ahead and plan that we'd have an inflation factor.
I would agree with that.
And then at the end of each year, we prepay our property and casualty insurance for the following year. So just as a stopgap for a one-time to help us not use as much as our fund balance or other rainy day money, we could not prepay that item. So I think that's another one that the decision doesn't need to be made actually till the end of next year, whether or not to pay it out of the 21, actually the 22 or the 23 school year. And then the last item is to utilize rainy day money to help move forward in the budget process now, just knowing what we know. So if we would use up to $3 million for that, we're looking for additional savings about 600,000. So I think once we do staffing next week and take your feedback from tonight, we'll come back with a recommendation for you in 2 weeks.
Okay. I think I will echo what Melissa said earlier in terms of the rainy day fund. Wendy, I know you specifically, but the entire team of administrators have worked tirelessly over the years to build up a rainy day fund for our own protection. And I feel like it is not only raining, it is pouring down on us. And $10 million is a lot of money to cut in a budget that already wasn't enough. And whether it's $3 million or whatever we can spare in that fund, I think if it minimizes any of these line items we just talked about, I can't imagine that we would do it any other way. If it minimizes the reduction of a pay increase or health benefits or middle school specials, I mean, any of these things are crucial to this district. I think the time that we've spent building up that rainy day fund would pay back in spades with our students and staff support that we're providing by not cutting these other elements. So.
And another thing to consider about the rainy day is many years ago in the recession, the state delayed our funding. So for example, if in this current year, the state owes us $36 million, we don't get payment of over 13 million until the following school year. So we're trying to also make sure we're still funding our current expenditures without going out and borrowing money to be able to do that. So the rainy day funds have helped us to be able to do that.
Okay. Any other comments about the rainy day fund?
No, I would agree with Melissa and Danielle's comments on the rainy day fund. I think the 3 million should be the last thing to be unprioritized. I think everything else should be funded first if we end up with additional funding, and then we can use less of the rainy day fund as our last option.
Was that Any other line items we need to go through?
That was all that I had. Just
Okay.
again, Superintendent Gunning has requested that we retain everyone. So that's what we will be looking at is, can we use those ESSER funds to retain the positions?
I am in agreement. That sounds wonderful. So just board as a follow-up, we will be meeting again in 2 weeks to review some of these things that we talked about tonight and then approving an initial budget. Is that correct, Wendy?
A projected budget, yes.
Projected budget, excuse me.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 8C, the LESD Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Goals and Progress Monitoring Plan Update. Superintendent Gooden.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we wanted to present to you tonight just an update on the diversity, equity, and inclusion progress that we have made, the goals, and monitoring. I'd like to share and just kind of reiterate that this is draft. It's a working document and we're at the very, very beginning stages. And I took copious notes tonight from all the feedback that we received tonight, because that is something that we'll go back after tonight and begin to continue our work in redrafting our draft. So when you look at alignment with our strategic plan, this work aligns with student success, empowering all students to reach their highest potential. People provide a work environment where all employees feel connected and valued so they can perform at their highest levels. To kind of go back through the process of our equity goal and planning process, it was probably just about, I don't know, almost a year ago. So right around the June timeframe, I requested that a committee be formed to do some research and learning in the area of diversity. And then from there, we selected some facilitators to do some strategic steps, timelines for each of the goals. They created diverse teams to complete the work, reviewed expectations, and then we began kind of sharing out that work. So the facilitators worked and completed some initial brainstorming ideas by January 20th. And then we presented those goals to our entire team in February. February 9th, they shared all of that information with our admin council, as well as we shared an update with you all in that night's board meeting. Went back to finalize some of the information and shared out a document with you at a Friday update. Then we began to look at how would we monitor and progress monitor from the goals that were selected. And then tonight we wanted to stay true to our plan that we were going to share out the goals and where we were at this stage. So if we look at goal 1, which is discipline, and SMART goals, they like to, part of a SMART goal is to put numbers to it. So that's kind of why there's a number attached to it as well. But by the end of the 21-22 school year, the number of suspensions for our Black students would be reduced to no more than 15% of total suspensions across the district. And when you look at this information, I know a lot of times people are like, well, why are you just looking at that particular subgroup? That was when we analyzed all the data, that was a group that stood out drastically. And just so folks know that analyzing data by subgroup is not something new. This is something we've been doing for years as a Title I principal. I had to analyze subgroup data to receive my Title I funds, to determine my needs, to design my plan, as well as looking at subgroup data. The U.S. Department of Education has also published the requirement for schools across the United States to analyze their subgroup, and that will become a part of our state report card. So with that information, I know a lot of people think, oh, are you going to just change your discipline and you're just going to stop disciplining at a certain rate? That is not where this work goes to. It goes to focus on the proactive and preventative piece, raising awareness. What factors and pieces do we need to do, as we could see that apparently the actual act of disciplining a child may not be working, and I would do that for any child. So just the same as if you saw any child that was coming in repeatedly, you would want to change your proactive steps and stance to do that. Because that was a subgroup.
Okay, excuse me, we're not going to have comments from the gallery. You've had your time to speak. Mrs. Gunning is making a presentation.
I would like to get through the presentation respectfully and courteously, and I am more than happy to get additional feedback from everyone in a different setting. So if I could please get through this, that would be much appreciated, because I would treat you with the same respect.
And I believe board members are going to be able to ask some questions
Right,
at the end.
absolutely.
Yeah, so probably everybody should be patient.
Okay, goal number 2. And looking at the academic performance, we saw disparity in our ELA and math proficiency in our Black and Hispanic students as measured by the statewide assessments. So this would be an area of focus to look at and to make improvements in. Goal 3 is continued learning. By the end of the 21-22 school year, all of our certified and classified employees will receive a 3-hour training in order to develop shared language and understanding around race, diversity, and inclusion. Goal 4.1 and 4.2 is focused on diverse curriculum. By the end of the 21-22 school year, the district and the school teams will begin to review current curriculum to ensure it's rigorous, relevant, reflective of all of our students in our schools. 4.3, by the end of the 2021 school year, all campuses will have a site equity lead assigned. Goal 5 is in the area of recruitment, hiring, and retention. The goal would be that by the end of the 21-22 school year, LASD will increase the diversity of applicants we recruit, hire, and retain. And then how will we progress monitor each of the goals? We will collect data in each goal area, such as discipline, district, and state proficiencies, K-3 benchmarks, and scorecard progress. We report and update data periodically, short-term shared in a spreadsheet containing the data in all the areas, long-term create an electronic dashboard that can display the data in each of the goal areas. And that's kind of where we are at this moment.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Gunning, for the presentation. I can see that it appears that these are slides are pretty much copied from the transformational equity work document. Have there been any updates or changes to that document, or is it pretty much like it looks like? Is it safe to say it's like a policy manual kind of for all this equity
Not
work?
a policy manual, it's just a draft document with a brainstorm of all the ideas and components put down in one place.
I see. Well, okay. So actually, discipline seems, a lot of these seem like they're clear violations, and I understand I'm really a fan of discipline, and I'm a fan of conscious discipline, and we've discussed this as regards to discipline. It's very effective. I think in other ways it puts too much focus on feelings rather than, whatever. But if you're doing finding better ways to control discipline, like is good. But this is a danger where if you say that we need to look at a particular group based on their skin color and come up with things that fit that situation, then what happens is, let's say somebody that isn't part of that race and it's not tailored to that, they're kind of discriminated against because we're not directing things to that, to their particular circumstance and cultural differences and whatever. And I think we kind of decided back in 1964 that we need we should all share the same culture, you know, and so that, you know, how do you address it? That's violating 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Act and the Civil Rights Act of 64.
Well, I think part of that is that we look at all children and we meet all children's needs. And so I would not say that it's kind of like the same thing. I'm not going to do something to one versus another type of thing. It might be proactive steps based on the needs of the child, but to monitor the data in hopes that there's some proactive pieces that we could put into place that would impact and help and improve. And
well, monitoring data is a great idea, and we all should. But to set a metric that you're going to absolutely, without being a fortune teller, say that it's going to be reduced by 15% is shaky. I'm going to move to the next question.
Can I ask a question really quick, a clarifying question based on what he asked? So right now we have this goal that says we want to reduce the number of suspensions for our Black students, but the goal is to improve our proactive steps, which could see a decrease across the board, correct? So we could see a decrease in suspensions for all our students based on these proactive steps we're taking.
Absolutely.
And the reason this goal is in here is based on the data that was received when we were evaluating our subgroups and which students we saw were getting disciplined more than others.
So moving on, goal 2, academics. In many people's opinion, mine, all LASD students are disproportionately underachieving in academics compared to other developed countries and even about 10 other districts in Arizona. So if we're making special efforts to increase the academic proficiency for Black and Hispanic students, for instance, how is this not discriminating against non-Black and non-Hispanic students?
Again, it's the same type of topic. It's creating that focus and making sure that all the children, that no one's getting left behind and no one's getting missed. And it's a point of monitoring and making sure the interventions are in place for those children, which we would do for any child.
Yeah. So,
but I think it brings awareness, and when you look at something and you see it, then it's something that you have to pay attention to see, is there something different, an additional intervention or a different piece that needs to be added in, which we do on a regular basis with all of our children, including our children with disabilities.
well, the problem is that some of those things you don't have control over. There are things that go on in the home and things like that, and this is a distraction. As for the continued learning, what if a teacher feels that the training is racist and decides they don't want to participate? Will they be allowed to skip it, or will they be fired?
I haven't even gotten to that point, but I never fired a teacher for not participating in a training.
Okay, that's nice to know that teachers will, a lot of them that have contacted me will like that. The correct goal 4 is dealing with the curriculum. And why should it says that the curriculum should be reflective of our students. Curriculum's curriculum. Math, reading, and history is the same for everyone, regardless of their skin color. All of our kids are just, well, if I said that thing about the disproportionate whatever, but why does curriculum need to be modified when we're not doing that great in teaching the curriculum? It seems to me that we need to really put our curriculum back to what's important: reading, math, logical thinking, true history, not opinionated. And these are the things that our precious kids need to succeed in the world. And the way you give equity to kids is you give them the tools to succeed, the confidence and whatever, not baloney, candy, hootie dotty, whatever. You know, if they do well at math, if they do well at reading, they are thinking and logical. They're gonna become
Ben Carson was a gangster, stabbed somebody, and he became the top brain surgeon in the world. So that's just utterly, you don't have the answer, that's just utterly ridiculous.
I would actually like to have an answer to that question.
Well, I'm not asking you, but you can go ahead and answer if you want.
Okay, thank you for your permission. I appreciate that. Representation is important to students because that is how they can dream. That is how they can see themselves, whether that's in a story, whether that is in a math problem, whether that is in their teacher or
Well, that's
their
ridiculous.
principal.
You know, there's
Excuse
no
me,
data
I'm
that
speaking.
supports it. If you're gonna
Excuse me,
lecture
I'm
me,
speaking.
That's ridiculous. There's no data that
Excuse
supports that.
me, I am
Absolutely not.
speaking. What I have to support that is my own personal experience, the experience of others that I know, the experience of some of the emails that we received back from people of color, and various experiences. It's not just about race. It's about being able to see yourself in a leadership role or in a story that you're being told in your school and showing that inclusion and that acceptance and that love. And I think that would be appreciated and would, again, cause all of our students to rise.
Well, if I'm supposed to answer it, I think the parents in the room think that's ridiculous, but I'm going to move on to my next question. 4.3 is the really crazy one in this equity, in this transformational thing, because it basically, if you read it, it gives teachers, the goal is to ensure teachers have the agency, I take agency as authority, to adapt, modify, or enhance curriculum to bring cultural awareness into curriculum. Since the board subscribed to Ibram X. Kendi's anti-racist theory, which says everyone is either a racist or anti-racist, so goal 4.3 appears to be either a mandate or at least permission for a teacher to enhance or adapt every single lesson to incorporate Kendi's racist theories. So how do you answer that? Because that's logically exactly what it says.
We did not adopt Ibram X. Kendi's theories. We did not adopt the critical race theory, nor did we adopt the 1619 project.
No, I'm not saying that. The equity statement says we subscribe to Ibram X. Kendi's racist, anti-racist definition. And by everything, the guy wrote a book on it. He says it in 12 different ways that everybody's a racist, or if they deny it, that's proof they're a racist, on and on and on. That's not a subject to debate. So
I would
that's
like the
what we
opportunity-
subscribe to, then that's what we're pushing onto the school district.
I would like the opportunity to respond to that as the person who drafted the equity statement. Do I have your permission to respond to that, Jeremy?
Well, gosh, I guess so.
Thank you. So I drafted the equity statement and I chose to use the definition of anti-racism by Kendi. I don't pretend to know everything or have all the solutions, but I can look to others and not reinvent the wheel. I chose to propose this definition of anti-racist because it struck a chord with me personally and spoke to taking action instead of just sitting by and remaining complicit with the gap in discipline and achievement in our district. I'm here to get it right, not be right. I am happy for us as a board to come up with our own definition of anti-racist that is just as powerful a call to action. But as long as this is our definition, we should give credit where the thought originated, which is with Kendi. This Kendi definition was put in place for merely that, a definition. It is not a manifesto. It is not a word of commitment to follow all of Kendi's teachings. It is literally, as a footnote, definition of our equity statement.
Well, you don't need to convince me because everybody in this room knows exactly, and you're just revealing that
that it's all about your personal feelings, which I don't think anybody out here taxpaying parents are at all interested in. And they're kind of appalled that our school is going in that direction instead of teaching their kids math, reading, true history, character, how to be good citizens, how to be productive to society so they can have happy lives instead of going around whining, complaining.
Can
So
I make can I make a comment to the curriculum,
Thank
please?
you. And I'll move on to goal 5.
I just thought maybe we'd stick with the curriculum part before we moved on. Would that be okay?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to talk.
I appreciate that you guys are going to make sure there's inclusive curriculum. I have a daughter that has autism, and it meant the world to her when her teacher read a book to them that had a student in it that had autism. So the fact is that this doesn't mean we're only going to have books that have Black students in it now and white students aren't going to be represented. It doesn't mean that's all we're focused on, because there's a whole lot of ways that diversity can be seen between different religions, different backgrounds. There's a lot of different ways that this can be seen, and we have to stop focusing on one area and jumping to conclusions based on one definition and an equity statement that infers all these changes are going to be made. Because again, my daughter was happier because she was able to see herself in something, and that matters.
So I got my 5th one, but I just want to remind the board that it's wonderfully that you have personal experiences, but your job, it says, the first requirement of the board and its duty. The governing board is responsible to the people of the district, not their own personal experiences, and therefore should be aware of the opinions and attitudes of the community instead of shutting up somebody that expresses them in a board meeting when it's on the agenda. And as representatives of the people who own and support the schools and accept the responsibility to identify community attitudes instead of scorning somebody at a meeting that says what the letters are and saying, oh, those letters don't count because I informed the community of what's going on. So let me move on to number 5. And let's just go home because I think we've had enough. I don't need to give a report of where I'm at because I think I've spoken enough. Goal 5. Thank you. Goal 5, how do you increase, we're having fun here, aren't we? Are we having fun? How do you increase the diversity of applicants by race? That is illegal. The diversity of hiring should be based on applicants' ability to excel at their job, regardless of their skin color. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they good for the job? Are they bad for the job? And to sit here and make a goal about increasing it by race is illegal. And if that goal is absurd, and if HR does not understand it, they should be replaced immediately. That's my last question. How do you respond to that?
I don't know if that was a question or a statement, but in the area of recruitment, hiring, and retention, it is very important to expand the recruitment strategies, especially in the area of education. We are in a teacher shortage, and we are in dire straits with that. And so just recruiting in the same old typical place doesn't always help. And so my goal is to ensure that we have the most robust candidate pool for our leaders to select from, and they will select the best candidate for the position. But they should have a very robust candidate pool to select from.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
I have a question, Superintendent Gunning. When will we get our first benchmark, our first set of data points other than what we saw in the fall to begin measuring our accountability on this work?
We haven't even come to that point
Okay.
just yet. So we're still just actually at the very beginning stages and actually continuing to look at the goals and strategies within this work.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question about, since the transformational equity document has been sent out by a board member, even though it was an internal document, is it common practice for the district to share very starting working documents with the public before they have fleshed out what that looks like, what the plan is. Like, is that a common practice for the district to do that?
No, we usually work through the document, work through all the kinks of whatever the implementation may be. As you can tell, it'll be an ever changing document because we're continuing to learn. This is new work and definitely very hard work, and getting lots of feedback from all different areas. So it will be a work in progress and will continue to change. But we wanted to always provide updates in our board meetings, which I mean, we barely just started the work as far as, you know, drafting the ideas, and came to you in February. And then we had planned to come back in March, and here we are.
So, right, so this was always the plan for us to be talking at this board meeting
Correct.
about this, regardless of what has happened over the last month. We were
Correct.
always meeting tonight and talking about.
You can go back to the February board meeting minutes and agenda items and the documents attached there.
So the district was not keeping this a secret from anybody.
Said it was a draft internal document. Yes,
Thank you.
but the goals have been shared out.
And to further comment on that, just to be sure that the facts are available to everyone, this equity statement was discussed in 2 study sessions, one in October and one in December by the board that was assembled at that point in time. And we received multiple feedback, not only from board members, but also members of the public and employees from the district, especially between that December 1st and December 8th meeting when we came back with the final presentation that did end up being adopted. That was all done in public and was not hidden in any way, shape, or form.
And I think you also stated very clearly in those meetings that you would be willing to revisit the statement at any point in time if someone requested to bring it back to the agenda.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Jody. I don't have any questions at this time. I just want to make sure I understand. So will there be a regular cadence of updates as this work continues? Obviously, you're going to, you know, continue to receive feedback both from the board and from the public. In terms of when, I know a lot of the beginning work over the next month or 2 is basically just reviewing data, looking at those data subsets, things like that, not making any changes or revisions to anything at this point in time. Will there be opportunities for feedback or for the board to discuss opportunities for feedback for, you know, the entire subset of parents and, you know, staff and things like that? So I'd like to ask that we just work that in. I mean, I absolutely love receiving feedback and having people come here, but we don't have enough seats in here for, you know, 10,000 families. So I think it would be appropriate, and to Jeremy's comment about not fully receiving feedback, I think when it's, you know, when we feel like we have something to share with specific data about what we're going to do, I think it would be appropriate and necessary to do that.
We actually already have a planning meeting set to design kind of like, I don't know if we call them coffee talks or those kind of things where we could meet in groups, as many groups as we needed to meet, as many times as we needed to meet to gather the feedback.
Okay.
My son's going into surgery in a few hours. I'm going to leave. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
We will move on to item 9A, our report from Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, I have some exciting pieces to report from our last time that we were together. The first thing, and I think she left, is Principal Capristo. We were so excited to have her join as our principal for our Digital Learning Academy. She just conducted an interview with the West Valley View that will highlight her and our DLA Academy for next year. Also, I was able to present at a national conference over spring break, sharing all of the strategies and components and pieces that we had together as we managed the COVID timeframe and all of the decision-making pieces that we did. We received an original commitment from School Connect of 180 devices, and they upped that and increased it to 500 devices. So we'll be receiving 500 more technology devices like laptops in the next month. We were also excited in our recruitment efforts that we were able to get out 50,000 postcards to let all of our folks know that we were back in school, and also reminding our kinders to register. It is time to register for next school year, so which is awesome. The other thing that we were excited to share is that from February 17th to now, we have increased enrollment by 113 students, and we have increased and we have 185 additional students registered for the next school year, and that's just in the last month. Kudos to Shelley for all of her marketing efforts and supports and connections with our principals making all of those phone calls to all of our families, and all of the efforts in recruiting for our children. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay. Moving on to reports from governing board members. Thank you to everyone for your patience. We're almost done. This is the last agenda item. Melissa, I'll let you go first.
So this month has felt like 10 months instead of one. Since our last meeting, when we got so derailed, I feel like, from our work that we're supposed to be doing. I was able to do the National School Board Association Equity Symposium, which was really insightful to me. The keynote speaker, Brandon Fleming, said something that was really important to me, because there's been so much controversy with our work, which is unfortunate because it shouldn't be controversial. He said, representation is the lens through which we dream. Young people can't be what they see. It is important for our students to be able to see themselves in the people around them in order to be able to grow and dream and see themselves as astronauts and teachers and doctors. And I think that's so important. And I'm so proud of our district for the work we're doing. And I think that we need to be open to feedback from the community, the whole community, not just certain groups that are solicited to send in messages. I 100% know that the parents that have emailed us saying that they don't support our stuff, they have valid reasons that they feel that way, because they're advocating for their kids and their feelings of what they think might happen. Because unfortunately, we have a board member who is sharing false information about what's happening, is extrapolating on one quote and saying that because of this quote, we're now teaching critical race theory, we're now going to teach the 1619 project. And that's just simply not happening, and it's not true. And so I think it's important that when people have questions, they ask them, and that they don't just assume something without the facts behind it. So, I mean, most of this month has just been trying to bounce from one thing to the next and answering questions. And I've appreciated the feedback from everyone, whether they support what we're doing or they don't. The people that have sent us information saying they support it, there's a lot of them too. They may not be in this room, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. So I do want to see us as a district go out and solicit the feedback from our whole community. And I hope that our whole board will listen to the feedback of our whole community and not just disregard information if it doesn't align with their beliefs. 100% you're right. I have been listening to everybody's emails, and I understand where the concerns are coming from. And I'm open to us making changes as are needed, as we feel the community as a whole wants to see.
Thanks, Melissa. I also attended that NSBA Equity Symposium and wrote down that exact same quote, because it was very impactful to hear his story and the things that he experienced. As Mrs. Hornback referenced earlier, I had the privilege of reading to Ms. Lovato's kindergarten class over at Maple Paget, and not actually at Maple Paget, it was over Zoom, which wasn't quite as engaging, but I tried to make it as good as I could. And I am very thankful to Ms. Lovato for letting me enter her class in that way. I also attended the ASBA Black Alliance meeting where we talked about advances in education for Black students. I had study sessions and special meetings as well as part of the district. I also attended a diversity empowerment committee meeting and had numerous chats with Superintendent Gunning to keep up communication on everything that was happening, including our school reopening, which is really the biggest story of the month. As Melissa stated, I spent quite a bit of time responding to emails sent in to the board in response to the misinformation disseminated by my fellow board member, Jeremy Honak. Since Jeremy commented on my passion for using song lyrics to express myself, I'd like to close my report with a quote and a question. This song lyric quote comes from Tyler Childers' bluegrass song, Long Violent History. And I quote, "It's the worst that it's been since the last time it happened. It's happening again right in front of our eyes. There's updated footage, wild speculation, tall tales and hearsay and absolute lies being passed off as factual when actually the actual cause is they're awkwardly blocking the way." End quote. My question is, why would anyone want to block the way to increased equity, inclusion, representation, and achievement for all students? Again, I will ask the question, why would anyone want to block the way to increased equity, inclusion, representation, and achievement for all students? I ask you to think about that and come to your own conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll finish the board report. I'll try to keep this brief. I did write a brief comment that I want to end the meeting on, but I also wanted to talk about the fun things that I got to do over the last month. I think one of the really important things that we didn't really get to talk about very much in this meeting is that we welcomed all of our students back to campus on February 22nd since our last meeting, which was fantastic. I know there's many students and teachers and administrators all over that are thrilled to have bodies back in their classrooms and students thriving there. We had several meetings, study sessions, special meetings over the last couple of weeks on various items, budgets and things like that. Also, we had a Healthy Verify presentation, which was a great sort of representation of what we had been doing in order to keep our students and staff safe on campus. And there was, a great sort of Q&A about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and things like that. So thank you to Jody for putting that together and making that available to parents and staff and community members. As Kim mentioned and Shelley did, I also read books to a kindergarten class at Maple Paget. And I won't go into the details of the reading or the books, but I will say that kindergartners were amazing and very inquisitive as to what the heck is a governing board member anyway. So it kind of turned into a civics lesson as well, which was great. They asked lots of questions and were really engaged, even despite sort of the lack of physicality and me being on Zoom and them being in the classroom. They were very respectful and really just had a lot of fun comments and questions. So I appreciate Ms. Willis and Ms. Lovato for inviting me to that classroom. And then I also wanted to say just a few things about kind of what our district is going through right now. These are tough times, I think, for both sides, and I just wanted to share a few of my thoughts and then we'll end the meeting. So I kind of want to start this conversation by saying that governing boards all over, and in effect all government entities, are run by process and protocols. I feel like we've veered away from the very rules that were designed to keep us on track. And one of my regrets, at least over the last couple of weeks, has been that, if any board member has comments or questions or feedback on something that's been previously approved by the board, discussed by the board, or even brought before the board, the place for that discussion is here on this dais, not in emails, social media posts, media interviews, and the like. This is the body that has the power and authority to make the change they're requesting. And I feel like if we can't show our community that we can have respectful discussions, I fear exactly what's happening, right? It's leading to mistrust and resentment amongst our constituents. I didn't sign up to be that kind of leader or a governing board member. I encourage all of our governing board members, our administration, and our staff to lead by example, to follow the procedures that are set up to help us guide the district in the right direction. Disagreeing can actually be very productive. I know there were some uncomfortable moments in the meeting tonight, but I think that disagreement can lead to better outcomes. But those conversations, they must take place right here with the right people and at the appropriate times so that everyone can be involved in that conversation. So I implore all of us, those in the audience, those up on the dais, and those listening at home, to try and put aside the hurt feelings and remember why we're all here. That is for us to lead the district and for all of this community to do what is best for all students. Those are your students, those are mine at home, those are everyone else that's watching, all students in the Litchfield Elementary School District. There's plenty of work to go around right now, both on the items we discussed in the agenda tonight, as well as the long, long list of district goals and priorities that seem to be growing by the day. So I would just ask everyone to join me in focusing our efforts on providing timely and truthful information from our side of the dais, and allow us to do our job, work through the process, accept your feedback, be able to take that and change and grow and really do what our community wants us to do. That's what we're here to do. We still have to support our teachers and staff through a really tough budget year. We just sat through that presentation. There's a lot of difficult things ahead for all of us. And in all of that, we need to keep the students in the forefront of every decision. And remember, it's not about one student, it's about 10,000 students. It's about everybody here. So I encourage everybody to stay engaged and to stay involved, despite what's been shared, whether it was about me or other members here. I want parent feedback, even if it doesn't agree with my thoughts or my personal beliefs. I'm not here to show my personal agenda. I'm here to do what's best for students and to do what the community wants us to do and what is best for the community. We may not agree on that all the time, but I'm committed to being open-minded and having a collaborative conversation. I'm not going to do it on social media. I'm not going to do it through media interviews and all of that. I'm going to do it right here in this room, or in emails with our constituents, or in coffee talks, or whatever the district sets us up for us to gather that feedback. I'm open, I'm here, I want to listen and I want to learn, but I also want to be respected for the decisions that I make and the hard job that I do sitting up here as a board member. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this very long meeting.
I motion to adjourn. I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.